OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
And you're very welcome along. It is Wednesday morning. I think I've got that correct. It is Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger Gilroy with you all the way through until 10 this morning. Also with us is Nathan Murphy. Nathan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
What's going on?
Just still thinking about Kylian Mbappe. Oh, this boy is good. This boy is good. Poor old Danny Carvajal. Looked like he was at the Winter Olympics ice skating, pirouettes and spinning, twisting on his arse for most of the match, trying to keep up with Kylian Mbappe, who just turned him inside out again and again and again. And we thought that Real Madrid were going to somehow hang on, use all that experience, all that nous. But the genius of Mbappe was just too much. Last kick of the game. Doing that sort of messy thing where you know exactly what he's going to do every time he picks up the ball, yet there's still no way of stopping him.
And he kind of gets the ball past a couple of players and you don't quite know what he's done to get into that position, or you don't quite know if he's actually done anything, and the players against him just think that he's going to do something and therefore they kind of step out of his way.
It was kind of weird, wasn't it? That last non-tackle tackle from the two players who, like, is it because they'd already given away a penalty that's why neither of them decided to clatter into him and think, well, I'm going to take the risk here? Courtois playing the way Courtois was playing.
I think both of them probably thought the other one was going to do enough to stop him.
Right.
Because when you do watch it first, you think, that is shocking defending. How does he manage to squeeze away through? But that is the genius of Mbappe. Everything is just so quick that there's the constant risk of the slightest clip. And with the speed he's going at, he's going to go down. It had already happened earlier in the night. So I think you could look and say, could Real Madrid have done a little bit more? Possibly. But I think you should just sit back and enjoy what Mbappe can do to squeeze between the two of them. And yeah, there's a little deflection. There's a little deflection with the shot that puts it through Courtois' legs. But I think it was no more than Paris Saint-Germain deserved. They absolutely battered Real Madrid, who maybe because Karim Benzema is not at full fitness, maybe because there's no away goals anymore, thought, let's just get the hell out of here with a scoreless draw and sit back.
We've been on this train.
Tight.
We were on this train from the very start. And everyone's like, oh, away goals makes no sense. This is stupid. It's like, no, away goals really, really important. It's absolutely vital. And now, the world's best tactical brains have realised that a 0-0 draw away from home is really great.
Like, is this more to do with the lack of away goals, or is this to do with Carlo Ancelotti being the football manager of Real Madrid?
Is Carlo Ancelotti...
There was a negativity there.
Big Sam with a couple of European Cups. There's that's a picture from the front of the Irish Times sports section. The ball has squirted out of the arse of Thibaut Courtois into the goals there, it looks like. And Mbappe's, for once, Mbappe has, it seems, managed to make himself surprised at his own genius. He's like, oh, let's go, look, oh. But Mbappe versus Courtois was pretty sensational.
Yeah, the two best players on the pitch according to L'Equipe and their ratings. You'll be not surprised to see that Carvajal was the lowest
3.
rated. 2. There was one player, two players on the pitch who got 3. One was Marco Asensio. Can you guess the other player who got a 3?
Ooh,
you've heard of him.
Vinicius.
Not Messi.
Lionel Messi.
Oh,
Lionel Messi. Wow.
That's such...
They get Pochettino at 8. Ancelotti at 4. 8 for Pochettino, 8 for Mbappe, 8 for Courtois, 3 for Lionel Messi. One of the scapegoats, I think.
That is very harsh. Like, is that not everything L'Equipe is against, which is basically scoreboard journalism? Because he missed a penalty, he gets a 3. Like, yeah. Messi, it feels much like Ronaldo. We're never going to see the Lionel Messi of 3-4 years ago again. But like the ball he played in the first half, where sort of reverse pass, off balance, over the top, where it almost looks like he put backspin on it to get it hold up for Kylian Mbappe. Like, that's as good as a pass as you'll see all season. Tried a little bit hard after he missed the penalty. He was sort of taking the ball off his teammates, trying to do everything himself. But every time he got on it, like, he still looked like there was something going to happen. So I think a 3 out of 10 for Messi is way over the top.
And if you're Kylian Mbappe, are you looking around that setup at the moment and saying to yourself, yeah, I'm happy to ditch this, to play under Carlo Ancelotti, to play beside those attackers, people are getting 4s and 3s out of 10s, well, in fairness, Messi did as well. Basically, who do you want to play for next season if you're Kylian Mbappe and you want to...
I don't know. I definitely would wonder, like, he'll be the king of France again. It's nice to be the king of your own people, isn't it? Because it very rarely happens.
Playing in a relatively, comparatively fun team Like, I'm not sure what Kylian Mbappe does on the opposite side of things. Like, at the Bernabeu, we may have a completely different game, and all of a sudden the Benzema, Asensio, Vinicius attack, maybe Bale starts or something, it becomes very exciting. But I don't know. I think if you're an attacker who's here to score goals and to enjoy your football, I think there's one team last night that looked the more attractive proposition.
Can I also just ask a question about how it has become fairly common parlance in England and the football journalism that Pochettino's failing in Paris? Pochettino's failings in Paris, blah, 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 Manchester United. Given Pochettino's difficulties in Paris, Manchester United. It's like,
like 13 points clear.
I was going to say, not doing very well in the league at the moment. Pochettino's failings. It's like, oh, geez, they must be like, I haven't paid any attention. They must be point clear, 2 points clear. It's like table 59, 40. There's a couple of teams missing here between Paris and Marseille, because there's 13 points clear of Marseille. The team is playing sensational football. He's managed to get the form back from Mbappe that we weren't sure. It was like it's the post-World Cup hangover. No, Pochettino seems to be doing an okay job, it seems.
It's because they lost a game in October to Rennes, the 3rd of October.
At the cup game?
No, that was the league.
Well,
they lost one game in the league.
That was just after Messi had arrived as well.
Yeah.
Listen, they weren't particularly impressive during the group stage. They were getting the job done. When you tune in on a Sunday evening and watch a bit of Ligue 1 and Paris Saint-Germain are playing, it doesn't feel like you're going back 10 years and watching that great Barcelona side, which I think that's where the expectation level is, because they have Neymar, Messi, Mbappe. Neymar's also been injured for the last 3 months, so they haven't really had them. Like, the hope watching them was that sort of Messi was walking through winter so he could run in spring, and that suddenly there would be a saving of energy, and that we will see the absolute best of them. They're also not, clearly they're not Barcelona of 10 years ago. Like, they're also depth and quality wise really where Manchester City are. Like, that midfield is a sort of workman-like midfield. I still can't understand how Gini Wijnaldum isn't getting a game at all.
Verratti is
under
not
Pochettino. Verratti's not workman-like, but is he quite at the level of Bernardo Silva?
Did you see Neymar's comments about Verratti this week? He says, "I knew he was an excellent player, but I didn't realise he was so spectacular, a genius. He's one of the best midfielders I've played with, along with Xavi and Iniesta."
He is.
He obviously gives him the ball.
You're in Kenny Cunningham's camp. Kenny Cunningham was like tutting when I was talking about Verratti last season. No, not having it. But he is. He's like, every game he plays when he's fully fit, there's doing stuff. There was an amazing bit on the highlights where Verratti gets the ball and actually gets swatted away by one of the centre backs or one of the Real Madrid defenders, who then pings this incredible 75-yard pass that just gets cut out by one of the Paris Saint-Germain centre backs. And like, I'd say 3 seconds later, Messi hits a through ball through to Mbappe, and a brilliant save from Courtois. Like, whatever about Real Madrid playing for a 0-0 draw and not being as good as other teams, this is the high water mark of football again. This is the whole point of all the money sloshing through football. Like, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, it is, and this ain't done it is the other thing. So, Karim Benzema will have another couple of weeks to get that little bit fitter, to get a bit of sharpness back. Like, Vinicius last night didn't look quite ready to grab a game like that by the scruff of the neck. When he got on the ball on a couple of occasions, he was free out on the left-hand side. You thought something's about to happen, but he just couldn't make it happen enough. Modric had a quiet enough game. You can't see Madrid at home being that poor again, that they're going to have something there to take. And then that's where the questions suddenly get asked. But this is as generally, when you have two of the big guns, it's as good as it gets. Obviously, when you have the mismatches such as a Manchester City and Sporting Lisbon, it's not quite that, but we will get the Manchester City against the big guns, which will be as good as it gets as well. So, yeah, I think the second leg of this could be one of the great games. But yeah, maybe you're right on Carlo Ancelotti. Like, Ancelotti and Alardici, it's not that far away.
I do think that, I think you're absolutely right. Champions League is the high watermark, and it is as good as it gets. But we've been so conditioned to how good the Champions League has been over the last couple of seasons that last night, I think Kroos plays a relatively straightforward pass along the grass across the pitch to Asensio, I think it was. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it's just like the best ball I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like anytime anybody who you haven't watched play football in a while, which has been the case, I'll hold my hands up with Real Madrid. I haven't seen him since probably the last round of the Champions League. It's like, oh God, this is such a good competition. And we're just kind of like gorging on everything more than we probably need to. But still, it is factually excellent. In
terms of what happens next, though, with Mbappe, we just don't know the political situation around football and what is happening at both clubs during the summer. So Pochettino leaves, goes to Manchester United. Zidane comes in. Who does Zidane want to sign? How much money are Paris Saint-Germain willing to spend if they lose an Mbappe? Who's Mbappe's replacement? Is it Erling Haaland? Is that lined up? If Mbappe goes to Real Madrid, will Ancelotti still be there? Does Benzema end up leaving? Who else do Real Madrid bring in? Mbappe might know all the answers to all of these questions and have made his mind up. And also, maybe the easiest way to make money is to move.
Yeah. Well, you get the one-off cash payment of the 50 million or whatever it is, particularly this one time where he's free at the end of the season, isn't he?
Mbappe, I'm not sure. Let me check here.
Totally out of contract.
He is, isn't he? Yeah. So, like, in that instance, you're saying as the agent, the transfer fee is 100 million, and you're going to pay that in cash in one go, and then you're going to pay us the wages that you would have paid us anyway. Because we know as soon as we sign for you, we're worth 100 million. We have a no transfer agreement. You can only transfer us to the club of our choice, and you can only transfer us in 2.5 seasons' time. That's the way those deals should be done.
Well, that's how the deals will be done. Like Erling Haaland isn't out of contract, but you can get him for 75 million quid. He's worth 150 million. Where's that other 75 million going? Straight into Erling and Alfie's back pocket.
Well, there's another. It's one of the super agents, isn't it? Is it Mendes or
Mino or George?
Yeah. It's getting to that stage now where most of the bad teams are going out. We really hope that none of the good teams get caught over the two legs, because I want to see Paris Saint-Germain against both Man City and Liverpool over two legs. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think you want to. It does feel as though Manchester City and Liverpool are probably still ahead of Paris Saint-Germain.
I'd like to know, though. I think there's enough doubt.
It's a very different type of test than Liverpool and Manchester City are facing in the Premier League. I think we'd all love to see that. The chances of the shocks, I think, are vastly reduced with the away goals being gone, because suddenly you can't get through with a couple of draws. If you're one of the underdogs, you're probably going to have to win one of these games.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It also feels that, I'm right in saying this, that we haven't really got a Liverpool PSG knockout game. We got them in the 2018 group stages, whereas that itch was kind of scratched with Manchester City last season. I kind of felt where Liverpool versus PSG would be a really interesting clash of styles. Messi at Anfield would be brilliant, but you don't. On one hand, you don't want to see Sporting going down without a fight last night, but at the same time, you don't want to see Manchester City knocked out at this stage either. You want everybody through.
Oh no, it's absolutely not. We need to see the big two-legged games. That's why this draw has been a great draw for Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid. For us, not great for them, because one of them's gone out, and as you said, I don't think it's guaranteed or nailed on just yet that it is going to be Real Madrid, even though that would be a big recovery from what happened last night. But stranger things have happened, and Courtois is playing so well that anything could happen in that second leg. Should we move on and talk about Manchester United? The headline is so good that the Mirror couldn't help themselves. They had to use it twice. Portuguese men of four, and then Portuguese men of four.
When it works.
I've never seen it.
When it works.
Here, listen, stick that same headline. Oh no, we'll use it for the other one. Oh. Do you think they're waking up today going, oh? Or are they could we maybe, does this allow us to cut half the staff? Same headline. So obviously it's because Bruno and Ronaldo broke his duck, his longest duck in a decade. Man United are back, Nathan. That's it. That's all they needed. Lewis Dunk gets sent off.
It shows how poor Manchester United have been, that they weren't on the telly anywhere last night and nobody cared. All the reports were that Brighton battered them in the first half, that David De Gea again made a string of fine saves. They get the goal, as you say, Lewis Dunk gets sent off and get a late goal on the counter-attack. Is it a sign of a turnaround? Is it a sign that they kick on from here? It feels as though they just need to get to the end of the season grabbing enough 3 points to somehow stumble over the line in that slow bike race and finish fourth and try and regroup during the summer, be a Champions League team, have Mauricio Pochettino in position and have players wanting to come to the club, because if they're not in the Champions League, you're not really in the mix at all for any of those top group of players. But it feels like there's a massive rebuild needed again, particularly in those attacking positions when you see where they are right now. But
it's not just the attacking positions.
so it's a good win.
I know that you look at their team on paper and you can absolutely make a case that they're favourites to get that fourth spot. But definitely the headlines this morning are kind of like Manchester United back into the top four. I'm not saying that anybody's saying this, but it does feel as if there is this subconscious idea that Manchester United are in control. They're in the driver's seat now when it comes to this top four spot. And I'm not sure I buy that at all. Like, there's every chance they finish there at the end of the season. But all recent evidence would suggest that when you look at, I know it's Arsenal and I know it's Tottenham, but the games that they have in hand and the points that they could potentially make up, like, are you backing Manchester United over the two of them? Maybe you are, given that Arsenal and Spurs are flaky as hell, but at the same time, so are Manchester United. I just think that, obviously you're being sarcastic when you say Manchester United are back after last night, but this idea that they're back into the top four and all of a sudden that top four has found its form again, I'm not sure. I think there's going to be so many more twists and turns before the end of the season. Ronaldo was excellent last night, which is the only not the only, it is one of the positives. The pressing game looked good. I mean, Elanga turns the ball over in a dangerous position and that gets Lewis Dunk sent off. That's what you want from your pressing game. And is that Ranić ball finally arriving? We won't know for another period of time, but the one thing we do know is that when Ronaldo's scoring goals, he's absolutely incredible, and no backlift whatsoever in his strike last night. It was a pretty stunning way to get back on form. So, like, there are encouraging signs. I just think it's going to be such an exciting race for top four because all those teams are flaky.
I would make them favourites on the basis that they've been through this as a group and they have managed to come through it. Now, not in front of crowds in some cases, but they've, like...
How do you mean that they've come through it? As in, like,
they've been in the Champions League race before to finish fourth, and they've managed to get in the top four more recently than most of the West Ham team and the Arsenal team and anybody else who's kind of, like, some of those Spurs players made it a long time ago and they're a different team now, I think.
Yeah, Elanga's interesting because, if, as you're saying, and I didn't see the full 90 minutes, I'm not sure if too many people did, if he was responsible for a bit of a high press and fitting into exactly what Ralph Rangnick wants, well, then he's a decision to make, because is Marcus Rashford doing that for him? Does he say, actually, this guy for me for the rest of the season does what I want? Screw everybody else. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to pick 2 or 3 guys who may not be the most glamorous, who may not be the most well-known, who are young players, who are going to do exactly what I tell them, and that will fit my game plan, and I'm going to make that decision.
Well, when you looked at the team,
I'm not sure it does, but
when you looked at the team named, it seemed to make some sense. It was Sancho, Bruno, and Elanga, and it's Fred and McTominay, and it's like, I'm not picking Pogba because I think he's going to get overrun, and I'm not going to pick Rashford because I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of him. And everybody can do the running for Ronaldo, and Ronaldo can, like, it makes some sense, at least.
It does. The next month, though, is going to tell us everything we need to know about Manchester United. There is the possibility that Rangnick, with the changes he's made, maybe it suits better against better teams, and we will find out over the next month. Because Manchester United haven't played anybody. This is the remarkable thing since Ralph Rangnick has come in. They haven't played a decent team since he's arrived. So over the next month, they've got Leeds away, Elland Road, full house, first time in a league match in 20 years. Like, have Manchester United's players got the character for going to Elland Road, the intensity of a Marcelo Bielsa side? We'll find out on Sunday. Then they've got Atletico Madrid. Then they've got Manchester City. Then they've got Tottenham. Then they've got Atletico Madrid again. Then they've got Liverpool. Are you backing Manchester United to win any of those games right now? I'm not backing them to win any of those games right now.
I think they're going to go through against Atletico Madrid. It just doesn't feel like Atletico are having one of those seasons. Unless Luis Suarez somehow manages to do something bizarre. And
Possibly. And maybe they grind it out in those. But you can't sit here right now and say Manchester United are good enough to win any of those matches unless they are like, say, Liverpool were 4 or 5 years ago, were actually a counter-attacking game. It suited playing the very best teams who come at them and give them space on the counter-attack. But, like, if Brighton were able to go, and again, Brighton are having such a strong season and a really good team to watch, if Brighton are able to go to Old Trafford and dominate for the first 45 minutes, that's a massive concern again for United going into the run that they're going into.
Yeah, they need to show a 90-minute performance before people start rushing to say that they've got this whole thing under control, because in a month's time, I guess with the 20th of March, I think is that last game, that run of fixtures that you mentioned there, the Liverpool game. That will be when we have a very good idea of Manchester United. But, like, I guess under Solskjaer there was a big game mentality to Manchester United at times. It was the games against the likes of Brighton where they did tend to slip up. Granted, it's just a few famous examples. Obviously, they beat Manchester City last season. But maybe they'll have that under Ranić as well, where they do go into those big fixtures and do show up, because I guess that was the one thing when Ranić came in. It was like, well, he's got an easy run of fixtures to ease himself into it, and it hasn't exactly materialised.
No, did such a great job of that. Noel Kyle says away goals should have only been taken away in extra time. I think that would have been fair enough. Like, you've got the benefit. It's been fair on both sides. At the same time, in extra time, to have the bottle to go on and score away from home, there was always an argument to be made for it. But I think that would have been a fair graduation of this whole thing. Sachin Bangaru says Arsenal to the Champions League. I mean, you would certainly say they have the biggest and best opportunity. It's just that the flakiness.
It's just because they're Arsenal. I mean, that is, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that they will not get the 9 points from their next 3 games, which are Brentford, Wolves and Watford. Although Wolves are going very well at the moment, obviously.
Right, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. At 7:50 this morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about this. OTB reporter Aisling O'Reilly was at the launch of the 2022 League of Ireland season for us last week and caught up with a number of players and managers. Here they are on the one thing that they would change about the League of Ireland.
Change anything about the League of Ireland, what would it be and why?
Probably going to say the referees here. No, I can't say the referees. One thing to change about the League of Ireland, probably a couple of the grounds not up to standard really. So maybe to improve the infrastructure of the league would be a good starting point.
Maybe better pay for the players. Probably something that the PFAI have looked at in the most previous years, and I know it is improving, but it'd be great to get it more full time.
From few of the away dressing rooms, probably, including our own, in fairness, and there is something being done about that, but that's probably it. Yeah, look, you'd always be looking to improve on that.
Probably the contracts of a lot of teams, because to have a stable team, you need kind of longer term contracts, where a lot of clubs in the League of Ireland do a year-to-year basis, where it doesn't have that stability, where you see kind of the likes of Shamrock Rovers can throw out 3-4 year deal contracts where there's more stability in the core in that team, and that's what it takes to be successful as them. So you want that in your team to have, going in every year and having the same base of players there and just adding a couple to it rather than changing 10 and 11 players every season.
It'd be perception around our league, a perception around all that. We need to change that and make it more vibrant, in that you only have to look now how many kids have gone to Britain over recent weeks. We're getting more kids into the league. We want to get more kids into the league. We want to get more young players that can, but we need to get the league more professional, and there's perception around all of that. It is a good league. It's a tough league. It's well supported. We want it better supported. Well funded. We want it better funded. We need sponsorship. We need all that. We just need to get that better. And I would just like the perception around our league. I'd like more people to be involved.
Longer contracts, what? No, I think just player stability, you know what I mean, giving lads more. It is changing to an extent, but still think it can get better.
It's a lot to choose from, but I would say probably stadiums. A lot of the grounds need work if we're going to entice new fans and make it a more appealing.
We're going to have more from the League of Ireland launch coming your way over the course of the week. Nathan, do you want to tell us about your new Friday night LOI show on OTB?
Yeah, late night, League of Ireland. You can get it, Ger, 10 o'clock.
Is it NSFW?
Well, depends. I wouldn't have the kids tuning in.
And so, where's this broadcast?
So this is live on Twitter Spaces.
What's the Twitter Space?
We're down with the kids. It's a little button you click on Twitter, Ger, that it'll appear if you follow Off the Ball. You will see it appear.
Teleports
on the top
you to space. Is that it?
Exactly. So if you're online at 10 o'clock, between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Friday night, and you go onto the Off the Ball Twitter account, you'll see up the top Late Night League of Ireland. Click on that. You can listen in. It's sort of a traditional football phone-in, which has sort of been lost down through the years because of Twitter. So myself, Johnny Ward and Shane Keegan will be on, but anybody can take part. So there's a button saying, I want to talk. You click on that. We'll see that you want to have something to say for yourself, and we can decide whether or not to let you in. We're not letting anybody in who doesn't have their real name up on it, because we do want to protect the integrity of the conversation that is being had. But we trialled it last Friday night and we had a great response. We had hundreds of people listening, and it's sort of aimed at that crew who are heading home after the match or angry about the various things that we just heard there. And it's fascinating listening to what's the one thing you would change, and it just shows up the issues for the FAI, that there's about 10 things that all feel like absolute necessities if the League of Ireland is to kick on and get to where it wants to be, from referees, from proper contracts for players. It's all right saying you're full-time, but are you paying players a livable wage if they're full-time professionals? Getting contracts so the players have the security, but also the clubs have the security so that if a player leaves, they get rightly the reward for that, and that they're getting a proper fee from players. Facilities was touched on there. It's clearly an issue still, the length and breadth of the country. I'd like to see more games on TV. I think access to the League of Ireland is a huge problem for a lot of people. I know, growing up in Mayo as a massive football fan, that there was no League of Ireland. We would go to Galway on an irregular basis, but you never really felt a part of it. And for an awful lot of people, like, look at the Premier Division this year. Like, Tala is the most southerly stadium in the League of Ireland Premier Division this year. Like, there's huge chunks that aren't going to see Premier Division football, that will see some League of Division 1 football, but for an awful lot of people, you've got to travel a long way. And
maybe the third tier will address some of that.
Perhaps, but again, they can't fill a second tier at the moment, and now you're talking about filling a third tier. And is that third tier going to be part-time, amateur? Again, what is full-time? What is part-time? What is amateur? Because quite often they're almost the exact same. You're a part-time team, but you train in the morning, so players can't go and get a job, or you train at different times of the week. So it's a very difficult situation 18, 19, 20-year-olds find themselves in.
Yeah.
If you're in college, are the links there with the colleges? So there's a lot to go. But I do think one of the issues is that there's just not enough games on the TV. 15 games. Obviously, Air Sport not being around anymore is a big blow. But still, Air Sport was somewhat niche. But for the national broadcaster to only have 15 matches on, sort of split up across the season, so you can't get into a rhythm of what's a title race, who are the personalities, how's Jack Byrne playing? I have no idea. And it's not necessarily an RTE thing. It's that the FAI just don't have any bargaining chip to say you got to show these games. So I'm excited about it.
It is an RTE thing. It is an RTE thing. They've decided to prioritise that they're going to put money behind other sports as opposed to putting money behind domestic football.
Well, they have, but I would assume that, and the obvious example would be that the amount of club football or club GEA games that are being shown. But the GEA, I assume, there have had a very strong hand to say, well, if you're going to show the absolute peak, the inter-county game, you're also going to show this amount of games.
Well, they picked up the existing deals. They picked up, just for clarification here, they picked up the old Air Sport deals that Air Sport would have had when Air Sport decided they were getting out of sports. RTE did a deal to take those in that current rights package, which was due to end this year, but which may end up rolling over to next year. So they will say that they got the league games on Saturday night, and part of that package is also getting those club games. And so, to get the league games, they had to show the club games, which I suppose is the point you're making.
That some of those games. Well, I just think there's a bigger debate, but I think it's insanity the amount of club games that were shown in the GEA this year in comparison to a professional league. That there is, some of these players are going to be in and around the Ireland squad this year. Like, the standard is good. It's incredibly insulting. I don't think you can put club GEA players on the same level as League of Ireland Premier Division players in terms of the level they are at. Like, this is not that far off several of these players being around the Ireland international squad. They deserve to be shown on TV. But there's obviously legacy issues there. I know Declan McBennett was talking last year about viewing figures. But again, one leads to the other. It's very hard to get viewing figures when do you know if there's a game on at 7 o'clock on a Friday night? Yeah, there's one this week. There might be one the week after. You mightn't see another one then for a month. Then you might get a couple of games. Are you watching Rovers? Are you watching Shells? There's League of Ireland TV there if you want to follow your own team. But maybe the Friday nights don't work. I know this will be very divisive in League of Ireland circles. Like, if there's still a TV ban in England, maybe 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Could you have that every single Saturday? You'd take away something of the Friday night feeling. But yeah, I think they need to find a way. They need to find another broadcaster. I'm surprised maybe TG Cahir haven't come in, considering the brilliant coverage they give of so many sports, to add another 15 on top of that. And suddenly you've got a game a week, and even a game a week, transform it. A proper highlight show at a reasonable time. But the numbers have never stacked up.
Yeah, like on those numbers. So what were we saying that the club GA were getting on RTE recently? It was about 200,000 was a peak, maybe, I want to say. So just like, this is just literally just a quick Google, and obviously the night of the Jordan Flores goal against Dundalk. So that was, I guess, it's actually probably a good comparison. It was the last time things were normal, and with full stadiums near the start of a season, that game peaked at 90,000 just after the goal, averaged out of 59,600 on RT, because that game was obviously on TV that night. So that's what the League of Ireland is getting, and I would suggest that the club GA is getting in and around double that.
It's hard to know. It's hard to like, there are different figures. Everything, the audience figures for TV can be, this amount of people tuned into this broadcast at some point, and it's like for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like what was that? So Donegal Boyle's reporting back in 2020, the figures were 61,000.
Right.
But we were told that was good because that was like 8% or 10% of the available audience. So I don't know.
Like, I mean, like you would have thought that if a game is peaking at 90,000 people, that should be enough to wash its face. And like, I mean, it shouldn't
also
need that. Like,
it also depends. So the taxpayer funds this organisation. Is it them an organisation that is supposed to help grow the sports or not? Like, do we believe in? Is it public service to show that, or is public service actually, then that means you have to show the basketball, and you've got to show the athletics, and you've got to have reporters at every single bun fight? I think we have strayed off into what is the whole point of public service broadcasting here, while they're also taking ads and sponsorship. Like, it's certainly an interesting debate, and I'd be interested to hear from the League of Ireland community what they think of how well or otherwise their sport is covered.
Like, it does seem, and I'm reading just from a Gavin Cooney piece here, that Declan McBennett sees an audience of at least 100,000 people as a success. So that's the threshold that he's looking to hit at the moment. But as you say, like, it shouldn't come back to that, or it shouldn't be solely dependent on that. And also, as I think you made that point just there, Nathan, is that, like, you've got to start somewhere. And it does feel that we're constantly talking about where does it start, even though this league is generations old. We're still talking around it as if, like, television's just been invented, as if, like, we're just trying to find a new first step into the new generation.
Well, we are. Look at the way the Premier League is covered. So we'll probably watch anything, as was proven over the last couple of years when every game was on TV. But Sky pick Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United every week. So you can see them, you can talk about them, you've got a good knowledge of them. If you had Rovers, Shells, Pats, Dundalk on almost a rotation, that you're seeing them every second, third week, suddenly you know the players, suddenly you understand and have expectations around form, around tactics, around how teams play. You can have a debate about it. It brings you back. There's a little bit of interest, but that's just not there. As I say, it's Pats against Shells on TV on Friday night. There's obviously going to be a huge interest because of Damien Duff being there. But when are we going to see Pats and Shells again? You see a young guy, you see a Wanku playing at the back, and you're excited. He's going to Udinese. You're going to see him on TV again before he goes to Udinese? We just don't know, because what way will they pick the fixtures? How many games are going to be on before July? So I'm surprised nobody else has picked up more matches, more of that air deal, which again maybe says a lot that commercially maybe it's not seen as being viable, but it does feel that there's a greater connection with the League of Ireland for people around the country than there's ever been. Like you mentioned, that Jordan Flores goal, like, COVID couldn't have come at a worse time. Like, that night in Tally, you've got 6,000-7,000 people. You've got one of the greatest League of Ireland goals of all time. You've got Jack Byrne scoring the winner. You've got a proper rivalry, it felt, between Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers. And I think that was Rovers' last home game before COVID kicked in. Now, they've sold over 3,000 season tickets. Shells have sold a huge amount of season tickets. Pats, Bows, they're all selling massive amounts of tickets. So there is momentum there behind it at the moment.
Yeah, and look,
there's things that outsiders need to do. There's things that clubs need to do themselves as well. Like, Dalymount, the redevelopment still hasn't happened. Do Shells really want to leave Tolka Park? Like, are they fully positioned to capitalise on the interest that Damien Duff will bring? It's hard to know. Like, I think they've made massive improvements. All of these clubs are, but like, they need investment, and maybe this League of Ireland strategy where they're doing the audit of the grounds will see investment come so that Tolka is redeveloped fully if Shell stay. Dalymount's redeveloped. That, families are happy to go to these grounds and know it'll be an enjoyable experience like you would get at a good quality GA or rugby ground.
Yeah. All right. Look, we're going to leave the League of Ireland chat there. Twitter Spaces from 10 o'clock. Just click the button on the top. Make sure you're following @OffTheBall, and then as we go live, you'll automatically be aware of it. Once you in the app, it pops up at the top. You can't miss it. You just click that button with all the people whose faces you know. Make sure you're signed in with a name as opposed to JSW 82 74 69. And
I'll tell you about Stephen Bradley.
Don't.
you're not getting on.
Yeah,
I would listen to that.
Here's a quick one, right? James O'Donoghue on his favourite Kerry teammate and the one player from another county that he wished he played with on episode 4 of the Football Pod, available on podcast right now.
The fella that I'm going to say that I would like to have played with is Ciarán Kilkenny, because I think that he has a bit of everything, and he seems to be a savage team player.
Yeah.
He never makes silly decisions or decisions for himself. He's always doing the right thing, and he keeps hammering the hammer. Like, he keeps doing the right thing over and over and over again, even if it's the boring thing. If it's the thing in that game that needs to be done, he's the one that just keeps doing it. And he's actually, it's hard to say he's underrated, but like, he's the thing that keeps ticking over the Dubs when they're not going well. He'll come up with some move or some pattern of play to get a score and restart the whole thing. So I definitely would like to play with him. I think that he's a savage operator. And the best I play with, again, is a cheek question, because like, obviously you're going to say Cullum, but if I was to go outside the box on it and not pick your obvious couple, don't pick Cullum or Donaghy or Galvin, say, or Declan, then I would say the fellas I liked playing the most with were Maher and Donncha Walsh.
Right, pretty interesting.
Yeah, clearly a fan of the workhorse, the person who does the
running for
sensible
him.
thing. Exactly, yeah.
We all love those.
As much as the genius, yeah.
Some really good stuff in that. Ask Me Anything with James O'Donoghue. They picked their 7 aside. Paddy made it up on the spot, but picked a lot of Dubs. James very, very, generously decided, I'm not going to pick any Kerry lads because it would just be all Kerry. And then you get to find out who his favourite players are. So it's a good little mechanic. He was like, picked Muggsy in his team.
Right.
I was very surprised. And then Paddy Andrews revealed that he has Muggsy's jersey from the goal.
No way.
It's Dublin, because his brother got it.
Oh yeah.
And then he was like, I must get it back to him. I'm like, what? No way. That's the type of thing you get. I'd say Muggsy has auctioned that jersey many times.
Yeah.
the Derry lads went on a tour of the States where they got the point that kicked the winner in the semi-final and final. They got those boots and they auctioned them a lot. They would scuff them up at wherever it was. Nathan seems to be gone there, I think. Yeah. All right. That was he came, he said it all, he disappeared.
You can catch him on Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't get into Mayo Dublin in Croker on Saturday evening. So here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Phil Thompson is going to talk to us about a legendary encounter in the San Siro in the past from one of the seminal moments of his youth. We've got the sports page coming your way at 8:30. A lap of honour from John Duggan, who is on the hottest of hot streaks at 8:40, when he talks to us about this week's virtual insanity, and a quick look back at last week's sensation. I presume we talked about this yesterday. Kerry depth chart with Dara Cinnéide at 8:45. Joey Carbery live at 9:15 this morning, and Matt Lawton at 9:30. At 8 minutes past 8, though, we're going to take a quick break, and we're back talking Liverpool-Inter with Phil Thompson.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball's the best, number one.
It's the GOAT of sports apps.
Talk about the greatest of all time. Nathan, you know Big Joe. Big Joe's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. We know it.
So
every single time. Yes. Yes.
It's tough going. It's tough for my ego. I'm going to say I'm the Djokovic of this scenario.
I love it. Love it.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Download the OTB Sports app now.
We've grown and we've done really well, but like there's no hiding the fact that it was a really big struggle for a very long time, even I suppose just to try get a women's committee formed, but in the last couple of years there's some exceptionally brilliant people have come in and given so much time and energy to the club and to us, and like I feel like we've really made a huge push in the last couple of years as a club. So structure-wise and things like that, we never had any underage teams coming through. You can see the likes of Peamount and the likes of Shells. They've all underage players coming through. They're associated with the club. They're signed to the club. They've played underage. Kind of just trying to pull and poke players out of anywhere. But the guys have done so much work. It's just exceptional. But I suppose it's just never wanting to let that bar drop. It's keep moving forward. And I'd say the committee are probably they're sick to the teeth of me at this stage, because I want and push for more and more. And I'm probably happy to an extent, but never happy. And you can see their faces when I'm coming, and I'm just like, they're oh God, what does she want now? But I mean, they're open and approachable, and they know it's not me looking. They know it's us looking for better and us looking to be. Because ideally, the plan is and the want is to be the best club and to be, for other younger kids coming through or other teams or other girls to look and be like, Jesus, Wexford is legit.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 11 minutes past 8. You're very welcome back. You'll have heard in the ad break there a true hero of the Women's National League, Kylie Murphy of Wexford Youths, catching up with Karen and Kathleen on this week's episode of the Koi Gig Pod on OTB Sports in association with Carbery FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland's Women's National Team. You can get the full episode right now in all your usual podcast spots, or you can watch it back on the Off the Ball YouTube channel as well. Right, we are turning our attention back to the Champions League. Couple of games tonight. You've got RB Salzburg against Bayern Munich at 8 o'clock, but at the same time you've got Inter Milan at home to Liverpool at the San Siro, and this is what we are focusing on for the next little while. Delighted to welcome Phil Thompson back to the show. Phil, how are you getting on?
Good morning, guys. Very good, thank you. Very good. Enjoyed the football last night. Wow, Man City blew them away. Absolutely blew them away. I thought there'd be more goals in the other one, but just one.
Yeah, Thibaut Courtois, pretty good at football, it turns out, to limit the amount of goal scoring there. We wanted to get you on, Phil, because obviously we'll preview the match in just a second, but Liverpool at the San Siro is a fairly interesting story, and if we go back to 1965, this is the season we want to focus on. I'm sure you were only a young fella at this point, Phil, so I'm wondering how much you actually recall about this season, because this was a European Cup semi-final, the first leg at Anfield, the second leg in San Siro, a great home first leg, which you were at, I understand, but a bit of a disaster in the second leg and a very controversial tie, all told.
Yeah, it was. We didn't have as much TV coverage, but obviously watching that game back was so disappointing. Yes, I was at that first game at Anfield. My mum got us tickets right in the front row of the Kemlyn Road, as it was then. Now it's the Sir Kenny Dalglish stand. And Jerry Byrne, Gordon Milne brought the cup round within touching distance of us. So it's a massive occasion. Inter Milan were one of the great sides in Europe. And of course, we blew them away 3-1, which was absolutely terrific. So going over there full of hope, knowing it was going to be difficult. And what was to unfold was extremely disappointing. Even now, when I think back about it, seeing what happened, St. John's disallowed goal and the ball getting kicked out of Tommy Lawrence's hand, and there was straight away everybody was looking and talking about it. And I think there was a big inquest into it many years later, which was quite proven about the officials in the game.
Yeah, I think we have video of the ball getting kicked out of Lawrence's hand, which we'll put on screen here now. So goalkeeper picks up the ball, brings it back into the box. The Inter Milan player sneaking behind him and takes the ball off him into the back of the net. And you can see the Liverpool players following the referee here at this point in something we may not see. It's like Chelsea that time with Michael Ballack and Drogba chasing the referee, to be quite honest with you. But in 1965, maybe a little bit more aggressive. It was one of a number of different moments in this match. There was obviously a free kick that was given as an indirect free kick, but Inter Milan take it directly, goes into the back of the net, which Liverpool weren't happy about at that point. Like what's interesting for me, Phil, is that you're experiencing this not in real time, because as you say, television coverage was in a completely different place at the point. So you're right at the front for the home leg. How do you experience that away leg? How do you find out about the controversy and I guess the events of that night when you can't even watch the game?
Yeah, well, we did see it. I can't remember whether it was on the television live, but I have seen what you're explaining there many, many times, which was so disappointing. And then obviously all the controversy that was to surround it afterwards. And I think it was many years later, I think in conversation about the referee, the officials, not that it was proven 100%, I don't know where I'm sort of getting this from, but it was brought about that they did find out that things happened that shouldn't have done. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and there was question marks certainly around Inter, not necessarily in this game, but later on you had the secretary of Inter Milan who was accused of taking part in match-fixing scandals. Granted, this was about 8 years later. A European Cup semi-final against Derby County when he had gone to Juventus in '73 he was under allegations. It's like, I mean, he was never found guilty, but there was definitely a bit of a cloud around the whole thing.
Yeah, it was so disappointing at the time because it was, Liverpool were the Merseyside was the place to be with the music, with the humour, certainly with the football, with Liverpool and Everton. They had great teams. So we were flying, the Shankly team, everything was wonderful, the Cup was in full flow. So the expectation was there, to go and win the European Cup would have been massive at that time. And to have it taken away the way it was so disappointing. So even for me as a young lad, people of a certain age will remember back, and I know there's so many sort of thousands, millions of Liverpool fans there in Ireland, but people of a certain age will remember it. It was such a glorious opportunity that was taken away from us.
It was Liverpool's first season in Europe. It must have been a pretty exciting, borderline exotic thing having Inter Milan come to town and being at those European nights. Just being there, sitting there on the front row at Anfield and Inter Milan coming, I think it was something, a legendary manager, Herrera, I think his name was.
Elenio Herrera, yeah.
He was one of the big names then in world football, never mind European football. So this was so exciting, and I can remember the steam coming off the Kop that night. It was hard to actually watch the game when, just as an impressive sort of 11-year-old, just sitting there looking, go up and have this mass of swaying people, them singing, and in the end, them singing, "Go back to Italy," and it was just fantastic. It was, as growing up, as being a Liverpool fan, certainly as a youngster, and I'm coming out of the second division, and them taking the grip of the first division, and then sort of going to conquer Europe was just a great feat in itself. But we were all there. We were all with the players. We were all with Shankly. It was a great moment. Nice to reminisce, by the way.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it is in a weird way, sometimes these defeats take on a legend of their own, but they also feed the desire for a club and a team and a city to conquer. Like, you as an 11-year-old end up being part of the team who eventually wins the European Cup for the city of Liverpool.
Back, yeah. It become a bit of a holy grail, as we're saying with Manchester City. Now it makes no difference when you haven't won something, which is quite precious. It makes that desire to go and do it, and it keeps eluding you. And you think, so that heartbreak of the guys of the 60s was our motivation in the 70s to sort of drive forward and grasp it. And once you break that, it became, you understood Europe, you had a way of playing in European football, taking care of the away leg, making sure then that the spirit of Anfield would take over. All those things, 77 then, against Mönchengladbach in Rome, sort of opened the doors to winning it. Yes, we'd won the UEFA Cup in 72, 73, 75, 76, but winning the European Cup was then the Holy Grail, and to do it, and then 78, and then my special moments, 81. It was the wonderful moments to come, but it was driven by those guys in the 60s.
How important was that, I guess, then for yourself to have that connection to the club so early? I guess you talk about it there, the idea that those moments of heartbreak kind of fuel the appetite to try and get over the line. But I guess your own sense of familiarity with that specific type of heartbreak was really important. The fact that you knew the club, you were watching the club, you weren't a blow into Liverpool, to say the least.
No, it was like that. We were just starting to sort of stake our name, and goodness gracious, a team of youngsters called Ajax of Amsterdam give us a right sort of. We thought they were the minnows, and they battered us 5-1 over in Amsterdam on a very foggy night. You remember all these things and the heartache that it brought on. And Ajax went on, and Johan Cruyff went on to be wonderful players, world-class players. So all these things you're watching unfolding. I say we didn't have the satellite television that we have now, and they're able to see multitude of games, but you got these games on grainy television back in those mid-60s. The match of the day was starting, I think it was 64. So you were getting fed this thing, and you wanted more of it. As a fan, it was all standard, and then the cop was in full flow, so you witness it. So that not being able to have it, which was winning that European Cup, did fuel that. And it was wondrous, going to other countries, watching the football being played, what they were like, and then when I was to become part of it, was that great feeling, how you prepared to take on European opposition. So it was quite unique. It was an absolute wonderful time to be a footballer and starting to conquer Europe.
It wasn't a bad season that year for Liverpool. I think they paraded the FA Cup that night you're talking about there when you beat Inter Milan in the first leg.
And that was again, we're reminiscing. That is still one of my greatest ever moments of in our history, because that has become something, the FA Cup. That was the Holy Grail. It was massive back in the day because it was a glamorous day out at Wembley. And to win the European Cup for the very first time for Liverpool Football Club, coming out of the second division, winning the league, winning the cup, winning the league again, it was crazy. It was great times, and you could go and do anything. Anything was possible with this man.
I just have one last question, just kind of on the while we're on memory lane here. Like, how did your perception of away days, specifically in Italy, change down through the years? Obviously, there was an incredibly hostile atmosphere waiting for Liverpool in the return leg, but that hostile atmosphere doesn't ever change. It is a stereotype that going to Italy is not only a battle against quite a robust set of individuals, it is also a cauldron that you tend to be stepping into. Does that change at all? Does your relationship or your perception of away nights in Italy change over the decades?
I think as a player, I think it was always there. You knew it was a cauldron. That San Siro had such a name. I never played there, but the San Siro had such a name, such passionate. As though we felt we were passionate in England. You had all this. It was so vibrant away from. You knew you were up against it. You knew that crowd, as we always felt at Anfield, that they could sway officials. Is that in Italy, you just knew, playing for your national team, playing for your team, it was just, you knew that was going to be one of the biggest games. And it was. You could go to Germany, you could go to Spain, and you would have atmospheres that were electric. There, as you said, was hostile, and you knew you had to do it. It's even the same now. I was very wary. My sons wanted to go to to Milan, and I was wary of them going. Thankfully, in the end, they couldn't get flights, which I was that. But it creates that sort of atmosphere, and still does.
How hostile do you think it's going to be for Liverpool tonight?
I think it's going to be massive. Possibly, thankfully, there's only going to be 50% capacity in there, and I think I was reading something. It's still going to be 40,000. Liverpool is huge once again. We became one of the biggest names in Europe in the 70s, and it is so now. So it'd be massive in itself. Players will raise their game. Good players, great players that they have, will raise their game again. They've wrestled the title off Juventus last season, and they're proven as though they're on the way back, as is AC Milan. But we did enough to see off AC Milan, and I see no reason. It still will be tight, but no reason why we shouldn't beat Inter.
I think one of the main successes of Klopp in recent seasons, and it's really since he's arrived, is that these games that Liverpool are the better team in, they have on balance tended to win them. There's a confidence when we talk about how well Liverpool will perform. There's no inconsistency. There's been no real flakiness in European football, maybe with a few exceptions over the last number of years. But generally, they win these games that they're supposed to win.
Yeah, it is. He's got that sort of knack. I said to you before, back in the sort of 60s, and we learned from it. We had a knack in European football of how you're doing it, and it doesn't change. You've got to be that way where you go abroad and you stick together. And that is so important. I mean, as a team, as units, defence, midfield and attack, you keep together, you defend together, you attack at the right time. And all these things, Klopp seems to have that way of playing. I think he plans for the Champions League games, obviously more than the League Cup or the FA Cup games. They take massive priority, and so he gives them great focus, which seems to and has proved great for Liverpool. You know, two Champions League finals is no mean feat, and it's great to win one of them. It was sad the other one in Kiev, but hopefully we have many good nights, because English teams once again are going to be very, very hard to beat. The
other thing that's happened at the moment is that for whatever reason everybody seems fit, which almost never happens. At the moment there are some selection and headache issues, and the bench is strong, and the players not making the bench is pretty strong too. So with that comes just an uptick in form, and it's kind of a virtuous circle. It is. It's great to have them fit. He was juggling so much last year, and some of the young lads who come in some of those European games were truly amazing how they handle the situations. But now he's got them all fit. Now the selection headaches come in. Who plays? Probably the back four picks itself if they're all fit. Matip's been excellent. But it's just that midfield area and the one position up front. I would imagine, because Jota has sort of done so well filling in, I shouldn't really say that, for Mane, for Salah, because they've been away. He's carried the team, scored the goals. I would think he'll come in for Bobby Firmino up front. And then there's what happens in midfield. Fabinho's a starter, and you're looking either side. I know people will say Henderson's not been great of late, but he has that experience. He has that energy. And then I think you need to keep the ball tonight, and I think that's where Thiago didn't play at the weekend, didn't start, and I think he's saving them for this game. They're obviously Champions League contenders, given the strength and depth, the quality of the field, that they're playing, the manager's understanding of it. And it was just interesting to see Trent Alexander-Arnold not backing away from any of this, with his comments about, he was obviously asked, are you in any way envious or jealous of Manchester City? He's like, well, why would we be? You know, we've won the competition that they can't win. It's not a knock on them, but we've won this. So they're feeling themselves, and they're feeling self-confident. Yeah, there is. I thought it was he was asked that, trying to sort of fuel something, and as you say, he didn't shy away from it. He said, yeah, Manchester City, and they are a wonderful side. I love watching them. They were truly terrific last night. But yes, they do have that holy grail. Like Liverpool have been able to mount it to win that title, and they had that disappointment against Chelsea last year, which will fuel their ambition
But Trent is rightly saying is that, yes, we can compete with you on the same levels. Liverpool, we've got Leeds next midweek, which should be our game in hand. So it'll hopefully transpire that it'll still be a title race. But it's hard because I did feel for Trent the way he got asked of it. But he handled it very, very well, the young man.
Just that, like, if we kind of zoom out a little bit from it, at the end of the season, I know this is not how Jurgen Klopp is going to prioritise things whatsoever, but does the Champions League take precedence over the Premier League? Because to win the Premier League from this position, you would say, would be unbelievably sweet, and there is still kind of an inkling of a chance there.
I think the Premier League should always be your bread and butter. It's been ever thus. Yes, the Champions League is wonderful. I always would like to think that the guys do, and at this moment there still is a chance of it, and it will be juggling the both of them. There won't be priority in them at the moment. I would think he knows that there still is a chance with this team, the way they're playing, with everybody fit. And the big game when it comes up against Manchester City will be absolutely huge. And that's a little bit of a way. So there's no way to sort of identify, right, let's put all our eggs into the Champions League basket. It's still all to play for. And there's still, as we speak, Liverpool are fighting on four fronts at the moment.
Yeah, it's the difficulty, that little patch they had where things didn't go their way, that made everybody just feel like the title race was over. The recovery of form they've had would suggest that they can see this out for the rest of the season. Are Manchester City just too good at the moment, though, Phil? Is that the problem?
That is a real difficult one. As I've just said to you, Manchester City are and it's when you get on those runs, Manchester City, I look at them sometimes and you go, from Christmas through to the end of the season, Man City can win every football match. They are that good. If they keep their best players fit, they can win every football match. My Liverpool team, fantastic team. We can win all our games. And you do have that little bit of a doubt that can we do that? Whereas you go, and City can easily do that. And that is there's something about my team which is just slightly different than Manchester City. We can maybe have that sort of one slip up where you don't feel like Manchester City can. They are in that flow at the moment. And it's not just the team, it goes through individuals. You're looking at Raheem Sterling coming back. You see Bernardo Silva last night. He was out at one point and he's come back a better player. John Stones has. And so this man Guardiola makes players even better. And I think that is the worry for us all, is that I cannot wait until Pep leaves, because I think he's the most sensational coach.
Yeah, it's a bit of an issue. All right, there's no sign of that happening anytime soon. But maybe look,
are you sure?
He's due a trip to New York, right? He's a couple of years to hang out and watch some basketball or something. Phil, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks,
guys. Great stuff. Enjoy the game tonight.
Cheers. Is there any sign of Pep? So in the immediate aftermath of the Super Bowl win, Sean McVay pre-game, he was like, it was confirmed that he's staying by one of the insiders. And then afterwards he was asked about it. He was like, well, we'll see. It's like, what? I mean, these super intense coaches sometimes do decide to... So if they were to win the Champions League, would he walk away? Is there a possibility?
I'm not sure Pep would walk away with that lack of notice, to be honest. I think that we're probably going to know about Pep's decision probably at this point in the season it does happen. It does feel that he would telegraph it a little bit.
No, I don't know.
You don't know?
Not lame duck. No, can't be a lame duck.
Yeah, I guess not. I don't know. Is it just mission accomplished once he gets to the end of the season and he gets the Champions League trophy in his hands? Maybe it is. Maybe he also wants to keep earning money. Maybe he wants to. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the Everest and that's it. Done. Put the feet up. But I think he's way too intense a coach, as you say there, to just not coach a football team anymore. Unless he's not. Pep Guardiola in his current guise is not going to be an international manager.
He could be a pundit.
There's a reason why Roy Keane wants to get back into management a couple of weeks ago. I mean, there's something missing. Punditry won't scratch the itch that Pep Guardiola will develop.
Well, he could go on a lecture series, you know.
Yeah, again, I think it's winning. It has to, and then if you win one, it's like back-to-back Champions Leagues. It's like match to Real Madrid back to back.
Maybe. Strange things do happen in football. 8:34 this morning here on OTB AM. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Quick run through the newspaper headlines for you before we get to this week's Virtual Insanity. Messi fails to find spark with Champions League penalty. That was was it a bad penalty? Was it a great save? A bit of both. 14-year-old punched a police officer. Matt Lawton talking about the cocaine problem that football has. We'll play that for you a little bit later on. Tiger Roll is out of the Aintree Grand National because of the weights. I thought he was very, very solid. That's Brian O'Driscoll talking about Joey Carbery's going to be on the show a little bit later on. And back page of some of the tabloids for you. Portuguese men of four. This is all the great Portuguese football that you're seeing yesterday. The Daily Mirror obviously enjoying it at a very elemental level. They were very turned on by the football last night. Salah and Mane don't booze, so they cruise. That's a better tab of the morning for you, isn't it? Jurgen Klopp says that because Mo Salah and Sadio Mane don't drink, therefore they will be quickly back to top form after the travel and exhaustion. And then the Irish Times has that picture, as I've already showed you, of Kylian Mbappe sticking the ball through the legs of Thibaut Courtois last night. And then they also have Cristiano Ronaldo scoring his goal with that kind of stereotypical Ronaldo body shape that you see there. Silva Bullet is the headline on the back of the Sun, and I am their rock. Kind of messianic. But Dean Rock is saying it's up to him and the elder statesman to keep the kids' heads up. Trent, it's Red 6, City 0. That's the overall score on how many Champions Leagues, European Cups Liverpool have won. Wimbledon will not ban Djokovic. This is after his half-hour interview with the BBC. And a Portuguese does it. United see off Seagulls as City light up Lisbon. Again, that's the theme of the morning. This rating is absurd. It's not fair or safe to ask so much of Tiger Roll. Here's Ronnie. It's the back page of the headline in the Daily Mail. And they also have the story. Still no release date for the IRFU's women's report. So the new CEO is in, and on the 20th of January, the IRFU told Sportsmail the first of these two reports was imminent, but when contacted yesterday, the union could not specify when the document would be made available. So that's 2 weeks further on. It won't be this week. It's still being finalised, they said. So obviously it'll be next week at the earliest, and then all the rest of them are pretty much the same. More drugs and skaters' doping cases. The teenage Russian figure skater, 3 different types of heart medicine, and that's Bernardo Silva celebrating the 5-0 win yesterday. So at 8:37, John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Eoin, how are you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Great. Good form.
Yeah, I suspect so. We're going to talk about why you're in such good form, literally and metaphorically, in just a moment. But what's going on in the world of sport?
Well, takeaways, guys, from last night. Mbappe, you'd pay good money to see him. Fantastic goal in injury time there, the way he cut inside off the left, like weave through 2 players and put it under the legs of Courtois. This is what Kylian Mbappe is all about. So that 1-0 win for Paris Saint-Germain against Real Madrid. Pity we don't have away goals. That is obviously going to be a talking point going forward. Man City, just like, to me, they're absolute bankers for the Champions League. Rodri is in there now, and he's the fulcrum with Bernardo Silva and Raheem Sterling playing out of their skin. Silva with 2 goals in the 5-0 win in Lisbon against Sporting. That was the first leg. Man United beating Brighton 2-0 in the Premier League, but didn't have it all their own way. Like, Jakob Moder forced a brilliant save from De Gea, who's been turned inside out in terms of his own confidence. Basuma had a chance, but then Brighton getting caught in possession. Ronaldo scoring his first goal in 7, then Dunk got sent off, and that was pretty much it. Bruno Fernandes adding the icing then in injury time. So back up to 4th in the Premier League. Liverpool in Milan tonight at the San Siro. Going to take a while, I think, for that new stadium to be developed. So there's still time to be getting onto a plane and going to Italy and seeing the San Siro if you haven't yet. I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to see it at some stage. They play Inter tonight. Luis Diaz could make his first appearance in Europe for the Reds. Jordan Henderson is fit, an 8 o'clock start for that. NUIG against UL in the Sigerson Cup tonight at 7:30 in Carlow, and racing today at Dundalk lads 1:10. Just the quotes from Michael O'Leary. Since we are responsible for the welfare of Tiger Roll, we must protect him from the idiotic opinion of this handicapper. We therefore regret to announce he will not run in this year's Grand National. Instead, Tiger Roll will be trained for the cross country at Cheltenham, and there's every likelihood that win, lose or draw, this will be his last racecourse appearance. He will then return home for his well-earned retirement here in Gigginstown for the rest of his days. It is a shame.
Soft diplomacy there from Michael O'Leary to try and change the handicapper's mind. This idiot. I've never commented on referees, and I'm not going to change the habit of a lifetime for this clown. The famous Ron Atkinson quote.
It's a shame, and I don't really buy the weight or the rating argument. In 1977, Red Rum won his third Grand National off 11 stone 8, and he won it by half the track. Tiger Rowe was brilliant in the cross country last year. The Grand National is a specialist race. He was an easy winner about 3 years ago. For older horses, 12 years of age, I don't think is too much of an obstacle.
So Michael O'Leary's just shiting on here.
Well, he took him out of the race last year, and look, Michael O'Leary had Here the Echo, I believe, die at Aintree a few years ago, so there is that in his mind. He's also won the Grand National 3 times with Rule the World and Tiger Roll on a couple of occasions. Maybe records and all that kind of thing doesn't matter as much as the horse's welfare. So he does pay the bills, but it is a real shame, because I do think like a row with a handicapper or an administrator is less important to me as long as the horse is safe and as long as conditions are safe, and conditions are much safer now at the Grand National than they were, of racing capturing the imagination. Racing's had a very bad year public relations wise. This will be a fantastic tilt at something to emulate Red Rum, and it's not going to happen now.
So the safety argument isn't something you think is actually significant?
No, not at all. The Grand National is not the race it was, and sadly for me it's not the race it was. The Grand National was something I just was obsessed about growing up. Now it's just a normal handicap with just different styled fences. It's not the race in any way. The fences are very much safer. And to be honest, it's not a jumping test anymore. Tiger Roll would not have got around Aintree in the old Grand National. He would have fallen.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so
O'Leary's just picking a fight here because he likes to pick a fight, and maybe he wasn't going to go for this race anyway. It's hard, like it's
just sad. Like it's just a shame. Like he should have run last year. He should have run this year. 12 is like loads of horses have won the Grand National 12 years of age. Horses generally mature. I know he's a French bred, but horses generally mature between the ages of 9 and 12 over extreme distances of the Grand National. Also, the Grand National is 2 furlongs less than it used to be. It's a different race. It's a much easier race to win now.
Okay, all right. It's 8:41. It's time for us to get into it. Virtual insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
In your life, have you seen anything like it? So, an 80-1 winner a couple of weeks ago, a 25-1 winner last weekend. John Duggan is on the hottest of hot streaks.
It's very Donnie Darko, isn't it, that intro? Yeah, Scotty Scheffler, folks, headline tip. We got to, I suppose, eat the ice cream about that one.
He's just rolled his eyes here because he knows what's coming next.
I know what's coming. For God's sake.
What's that?
I was going to be like, oh, do you know what Donnie Darko is?
Do you?
Yes, of course I do, John.
Okay, that's right.
No, he always says that, and he doesn't.
Mad World.
So there was a song, but apart from that.
What do you mean apart from that? It's the only thing that's worth...
Actually, the pop culture references are even more fun with the Jamiroquai music underneath.
Yes, I agree, John. I wholeheartedly agree with that sentence.
You should be good for me. You collected money in the last few days.
John, my wallet has never been heavier thanks to you. I love you.
So Scotty Scheffler won the Phoenix Open in a playoff, 25-1 last week, so that was the headline pick. And we're going to go to California now for the Genesis Invitational over the next few days. So we're going to, if you could just maybe bring the music down a little bit, that'd be great. Rory Mcilroy is the headline tip this week, folks. 5 each way, 22-1 for 50.
It's getting louder there.
Oh my God. Rory Mcilroy. This is like, what was it? Cornholio again. Kill the music, please. Kill the music. So Rory Mcilroy, 5 each way, 22-1. What am I looking at in this tournament? I'm looking at players that the top 10 in the world are in this tournament this week in the Genesis Invitational, and you'd have to expect that one of the top 10 will win. But I was looking at a couple of things here. I was looking at price and also value here, and also like Rory Mcilroy can turn up any week and win. Now, sometimes he gets in his own way. It's happened in Dubai a couple of times, but he was fourth in this in 2019. He was tied for fifth the following year. At whatever, 4 to 5 1 a place for 8 places. I think Rory Mcilroy is a very strong headline recommendation each way this week. And of course, he really likes Riviera, 22-1 for 5 each way. He's the headline selection. The second one is Xander Schauffele for 4 each way, 25-1. the Olympic champion, was a shot out of the playoff in Phoenix last week, and he's double the price of Patrick Cantlay. Now, Patrick Cantlay is playing probably the best golf in the world at the moment, but Xander Schauffele has got the all-round game, hits it a mile off the tee, has been never worse than 23rd in 4 starts in Riviera in the Genesis Invitational. I think at 25-1, he's a value bet each way this week for 4 each way. So 80% of the money this week is going on 3 players, Rory, Schauffele, and the third one is Matt Fitzpatrick from England, 33-1 for 3 each way. Amazingly, he's strokes gained. He's the top player in America on the PGA Tour at the moment. He was 6th at Pebble Beach, 10th last week at the Phoenix Open, and he was 5th in this last year. Plays tough course as well. Great putter of the ball. Matt Fitzpatrick, I think he's working really, really hard. And at 33-1, he's worth 3 each way. And then the 3 outsiders for €1 each way, the 3 of them. Robert McIntyre has got something about him. He's 125-1. He's been twice in the top 15 the last couple of weeks in the UAE. He played Riviera in the US Amateur in 2017, so he has seen the course before. He hits a draw, but he's a left-hander, so I think that'll suit him at this course. And I think he's a very good putter as well. Robert McIntyre for €1 each way, 125-1. And the 2 lads who played the US Amateur final in 2017, Doug Im is 150-1 for €1 each way. Was in the top 5 in approach last week in Phoenix, but didn't putt very well, but puts better on the POA greens he's going to face this week. So he could be worth €1 each way to make the frame. And the other one, Doc Redman, is 300-1. I've noticed Doc, because he played well at Pebble Beach and also at Torrey Pines in spots. Loves the course, obviously, from his US Amateur win, Doc Redman, at 300-1 for €1 each way. So Doc Redman, Doug Gim and Robert McIntyre are the outsiders for very small money, but the 3 in descending order, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander Schauffele, and the headline tip this week, folks, for Ireland, Rory Mcilroy to get his 21st win on the PGA Tour.
To come of age. John, good stuff. That's this week's Virtual Insanity. Best of luck as well. It is 8:45. Joey Carbery is going to join us live here around about 9:15 this morning. First, though, we've been flying through our Gaelic football depth charts over the last few weeks. Right now, we're bringing you a Kerry special. It is Eoin with Dara.
OTB AM.
Okay, we are continuing our series of analysing the depth charts of the All-Ireland contenders in football, and we are turning our attention to Kerry this morning. All-Ireland winning captain Dara Cinnéide is with us to analyse. Dara, how are you getting on?
Not too bad at all. No one. How are you?
Yeah, good. Just before we get into the depth chart, because there's a lot of interesting things to get stuck into there, what's been your big takeaway, I guess, from the first couple of weeks in the league under Jack O'Connor and his third reign?
I suppose really all the thing that a lot of neutral observers and Kerry observers were looking out for were how are we going to do it midfield in particular. David Moran obviously is a long-term injury coming out of last year's championship in Kerry, and you're looking for somebody to progress there. There was a lot of talk about Joseph O'Connor, Joe O'Connor, Austin Stacks with a very good championship, and then he gets injured against Finn Bars in the club championship, and so you're looking first game out in the National League anyway was a midfield that probably wouldn't be first choice. Adrian Spillane and Sean O'Shea, bit of experimentation going on there. Probably wasn't experimented with long enough to take on one game, and when Kevin Feely did a bit of damage against Kildare in the second half, I think they reverted to the Vale lads who were coming back, David O'Connor and Jack Barry, and Saturday inside in Tralee, I'd have to say they played quite well against a decent Dublin midfield. So that's the takeaway, I suppose, up to now. How are we doing it midfield? How are we doing in terms of commanding position at tricky times in the game? And that's what we'll be constantly looking out for over the next 3 or 4 league games as well.
And given the way the game has developed over the last little while, that's not necessarily isolated to who you pick at number 8 and number 9. Obviously, the half-backs and the half-forwards come into that big time.
That's it. I honestly thought, let's say Sean O'Shea, for example, was a viable option at midfield, but I suppose it's a kind of a whole different mindset. I thought Sean O'Shea maybe was worth having a look at for 3 or 4 National League games, but obviously I suppose the game against Kildare, where the game wasn't grabbed by the scruff of the neck by a lot of players, not just Sean O'Shea. I think they probably rushed to get the natural midfielders back, but it's still an option on a bigger pitch on a drier day and in different circumstances. And the way the game is being played, it is very much horses for courses on a given day. And Sean O'Shea, Jack is a fierce fan of playing lads in their natural positions, in their best positions, and we all know that Sean O'Shea is an excellent centre forward, so he probably will be positioned there for a long, long time. But that's not to say if the case arose during the course of the spring or early summer that maybe Sean O'Shea is an option against a particular type of opponent at midfield. It was worth experimenting with, possibly experimenting that bit longer with it. But you can't argue with David O'Connor's performance and Jack Barry's last night against Dublin.
Absolutely not. Well, let's have a look at your forwards first up, Dara. We've been kind of looking at the forwards and working our way backwards. So for our radio listeners, the starters in the half-forward line are Adrian Spillane, Sean O'Shea and Joe O'Connor. And then your full forward line, if you were picking the team, would be Paddy Clifford, David Clifford and Paul Ganey. The first thing that really jumps off the page to me here, Dara, is the size of the half-forward line, because I think that was the angle after Kildare, wasn't it? That there were 3 5-foot-something lads in there. Adrian Spillane, Sean O'Shea and Joe O'Connor. None of them are small lads.
Yeah, this is your fantasy football pick really for the first round of the championship. It's not to say that it might change from game to game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is deliberately aimed at putting a bit of size into the half-forward line and positioning Sean O'Shea in his best position. Adrian Spillane has given you a lot. He might not be, I suppose, your go-to first choice midfielder, but he's certainly worth something. His grunt and his work rate is worth something on a modern team, and he can play wing forward. And likewise, I think it's more intrigue than anything else with Joe O'Connor. Saw him a bit in the county championship the last couple of years, and he is a good footballer. He's a lovely sidestep, an intelligent player, good in possession of the ball. And then you're saying, okay, where are your natural wing forwards, the Dara Minahans, the Stephen O'Briens and these lads, and Micheál Burns? Well, they might be playing later on the year, but I would like for the first round of the championship possibly just to see a Kerry team go with size and athleticism, and you get that with Spillane and Joe O'Connor. I don't mean in any way, because I'm certainly not 6 foot. I wasn't a 6 foot guy myself, but the old adage of kind of a good big guy is probably better than a good small guy in the modern game, all other things being equal, and that is your fantasy football selection really at that stage. Adrian Spillane at 10, Joe O'Connor at 12, Sean O'Shea in between, all 6 foot plus, and all give you options if you are struggling in midfield.
How much, not that they struggled in midfield at all that day against Tyrone, but how much is that All-Ireland semi-final defeat informing the physicality that you would be picking in your fantasy football half-forward line?
Well, I think it's been said, and even Pat Spillane said it on TV there lately, that Kerry lack physicality. I don't think it's a question of physicality. I think it's a question of aggression. You can have a small, aggressive guy that will be extremely physical. I mean, Paul Galvinus was a 6 foot, not exactly a small guy, but he was extremely physical and extremely combative in that area. And that's probably what you need. Every other, Stephen O'Brien up until 2019 was a brilliant player, and is still a very, very good player. He was one of the top wing forwards in the game. Dara Minahans, likewise, who's playing probably at 80% fitness at the moment and getting there, and is a really good underage player and has a lot to prove at senior level, but has had good performances at senior level. But the Tyrone game, I suppose, as you say, we didn't lose midfield that day. I think Tyrone did more damage against Mayo subsequently in the final at midfield than they did against Kerry. But what we did lack, I suppose, is when the breach happened at midfield a few times, it was catastrophic, and it had a knock-on effect right through into the full back line, and then the 3 goals conceded. And you're looking for lads around that area with a sense of responsibility. What that means is, when the ball doesn't break your way and it breaks to the opposition or goes to the opposition, that somebody 10, 15, 20 yards away makes that 20-yard sprint just to go to track the hard running from the opposition through the middle or along the wings. And I think Spillane and Joe O'Connor would give you that. They'd have to be programmed like any other player, I'm sure, like to do that. And not to say that the likes of Dara Minahans, Stephen O'Brien and Micheál Burns don't give you that, but if and when they do make that tracking run, and if and when they do catch up, they're more physical in that area, and they're more likely to hold up the move and to give your backs a bit of a chance. And that's what's informing the selection in that line.
Your full forward line then, when we look at that, it is Paddy Clifford, it is David Clifford, and it is Paul Ganey. I assume, obviously, the way things are at the moment, Clifford and Ganey are your 2 inside forward lines, and Paddy Clifford plays a little bit deeper. And really, if someone like Killian Spillane or Tony Brosnan were to get into the team, they would need to be getting in ahead of David Clifford or Paul Ganey, right?
Yeah, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. I suppose that there are no guarantees in any team selection, but David Clifford is home and hose. And you keep him close to goal if at all possible. And Paul Ganey went through possibly a patchy bit of form, but he was being moved around an awful lot. Paul Ganey is a lethal inside forward and still has it, at that level. Even at club level last year, I was watching him in a West Kerry final early December, I think it was. And, a game that he could very easily be disinterested in. He was outstanding. His application, his work rate, his track. There was a high ball kicked into him about 5 minutes to go in a game that they were 10 points up. and he chased the length, didn't win the high ball, but chased the length of the field to turn it over again. And you're saying, geez, this guy has a bit between his teeth. And if he's played in his natural environment with David Clifford inside, they're very, very dangerous, great football skills, good ball winning skills as well. The last night against Dublin, Paul Ganey, ball was stalling out around the middle, and he obviously, to anybody present, demanded a high ball, demanded it, took a step back from his man, and that showed a fierce vote of confidence. One, that the ball was played in his direction, and two, that he demanded it, and that he subsequently won the mark and kicked the ball over the bar. That tells me that he still has it at that level, and okay, it's a league game in February, but it was an important game, and he still has an awful lot to contribute there. There's a kind of an institutional memory there as a footballer. Paul Ganey, he was an all-star 2 years in a row a number of years ago, and there was people saying, okay, just because he's 30 now or whatever, he's starting to turn, he still has so much to offer that team. You can take him off with 10, 15, 20 minutes to go, but he will give you his all in that line, and himself and David Clifford inside. You'd have to put Paddy out, obviously, and with the fluidity of movement in all the forward lines at the moment will dictate that it's a luxury even to have two inside at any one time. You expect David Clifford, you expect Paul Ganey to track back when needs most, and they have a willingness to do that most of the time, and get hands on defenders coming out with the ball. That's critical to the lads on the other side of the field.
So how does that Paddy Clifford role work then in terms of, say, instructions to the team? Because it felt last year at times, early in the championship, Sean O'Shea would go in closer to goal, and then obviously at the start of the campaign this year, Sean O'Shea was at midfield. So Paddy naturally fitted into an 11 type role. That kind of gets muddied at times when you have Sean O'Shea sitting as a half forward, does it? Or can Paddy kind of fit in wherever the gaps are?
I think Paddy's type can do that, and that's not to say that, the previous management deployed Sean O'Shea nearer the goal and then, like you said, out the field as well. And that can be right in a given set of circumstances, but really you want to score, you want forwards scoring, and there you have, in that lineup, you have 4 scoring forwards at least. And the other 2 lads can score. Adrian Spillane and Joe Connor can score. Like Dara scored a goal the last night and created a lot of havoc as well. But if you have 4 scoring forwards, that will guarantee that they'll have numbers and brackets after their names. You're on a winner there straight away. And I do think that Paddy Clifford has the game intelligence to see as the game progresses, to play what's in front of him. If Sean O'Shea has gone in, that Clifford drifts out. If not, that he's the go-to guy for the receiving ball. Sean O'Shea is kind of like Donoghue Walsh of old, where there's constant motion and he's in a position to receive the ball, and that's invaluable for somebody where the heat is coming on. Let's say if you have the likes of, let's say, Paul Murphy or Tyke Morley in possession of the ball in the half-back line, and genuine heat is coming on, as was in the first 10 minutes against Dublin in the National League game the last day even, that you need somebody like Sean O'Shea presenting with a yard of space between him and his man. And Sean O'Shea has that game, and Paddy Clifford has that game. They're both very comfortable in possession, both comfortable receiving the ball with their back to goal, with genuine heat, on their back as they're receiving the pass. And players like Tyke Morley, like Paul Murphy, need to know that when Sean O'Shea or Paddy Clifford receive the ball, that they're not going to spill it, because that's where the trouble starts, really, and that's where Kerry's trouble has started. We saw it above in Kildare the last year. Paul Murphy's in possession of the ball, gets turned over because there's no genuine outlet there. But if you have Paddy Clifford and Sean O'Shea screaming for possession, demanding possession, with an opposition man right up their back, like, you still have to trust that they're going to win that, that they're going to secure possession and not spill it, and not make you look like a fool as a half-back as well. And I think those 2 lads have it. So I think O'Shea and Clifford have the game intelligence to find those pockets of space to receive those out balls. And with ball in hand, they're very creative and very comfortable.
We're just going to skip on to the backs here, Dara. And I think from the Dublin game, you had 6 backs who played well. So the question was, who drops out when Gavin White comes back in because he's too good not to start? So you've opted for Dan Donoghue going to the bench in the context of that, and Bruno Biogliac going into the full back line. Biogliac, in fairness, Dara, has been one of Kerry's better performers over the last 3 years. While the hue might be one of disappointment around Kerry in general, Biogliac has really seemed to live up to his potential now over the last couple of seasons. So can he do that same damage from cornerback as he's been doing in the half-back line?
Tom O'Sullivan tends to do a certain amount of damage from cornerback, particularly at club level, sometimes at inter-county level, and Brian has that force to get him out there. Cornerbacks and wing backs are very interchangeable. You find yourself in that position over the course of the game anyway. Obviously would have won an All-Ireland minor medal as a full back, would have played a lot of schools football as a fullback, plays a lot of club football at fullback, and runs the length of the field, which is probably a bit easier to do at club level than would be maybe at inter-county level when the attrition, once you get to the half-back line, starts to happen. Really, Dan O'Donoghue was very unlucky not to be on this team because possession is 9/10 of the law. He hasn't put a foot wrong all year. This is just preempting, I suppose, novice season, fresher season really for Dan, and that once the championship comes around, that probably there will be six backs more accomplished than him there. But I think if he has an excellent league campaign and you come to the first round of the championship and he's not selected, he can feel hard done by. But obviously, like every other county panel, I'd say training ground form will dictate, all other things being equal, all players being available, free of injury and all that. That there you have. I don't think you could fit in Dan O'Donoghue ahead of Brian O'Begley, Jason Foley, Tom Sullivan, Paul Murphy, Tyke Morley or Gavin White. And in that case, I have no problem putting Brian O'Begley back in the corner because he has played there, he's comfortable there, and yeah, he can still do his runs just like Tom Sullivan does his runs, like provided the cover is there behind him. Brian is establishing himself as a Kerry senior inter-county football. And the last day, even against Dublin in the early phases of the game, when the game in Dublin was a bit more intense in their game, he was jumping and diving and breaking balls, securing it in the wet conditions. And the only element that Brian has to bring to his game now at this stage is, I suppose it's unfair to compare him to another former clubmate, Tomás O'Shea, who used to, have a finished product. Brian got a goal against Cork, got a goal against Meath in the championship in the Super 8s a couple of years ago. He needs to do that consistently and needs to, take it on himself and trust himself and back himself when he gets into those positions, because he's an excellent kicker. His quality of his passing the last day from the half-back line was excellent, but that's not to say he couldn't do the same from the full-back line, provided you were dominating at midfield. And a lot of this is preempted by midfield, one-way traffic, which, as we know, doesn't always happen. But I would have no issue with Brian as a cornerback or as a wing-back.
The other options there that you have down in the bench in defence, Mike Breen, who obviously broke through for Kerry last year and was exceptional, and Dylan Casey, who was exceptional in the jersey of Austin Stacks over the course of the winter. People getting ahead of themselves, possibly including myself, were saying that Dylan Casey could potentially be a full back straight away for Kerry. I guess a victim of Stacks' own success, that he's not going to get a look in too early in the season. But from what you've seen, is the hype real, I guess, about Dylan Casey?
Yeah, it's not so much hype. What I think people like about Dylan Casey is you're looking at the opposition's best forward, and after they played Austin Stacks in the championship and right through the Munster championship, the opposition's best forward didn't have a good game. So you're saying, okay, what happened there? Was it really tight marking? Was it in-your-face marking? Was it cynical play? Was it what? And all the way up through the last year's championship, right through to the Munster final against St. Finbarrs, Dylan Casey kept really quality forwards quiet. So he obviously has something. He's one of these defenders that probably mightn't get involved in, supporting a run up the field or finishing a run like Brian O'Begley or Thomas Sullivan or something like that. But he keeps good forwards, top class forwards at club level in particular, quiet. And these are forwards like Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, Sherlock from St. Finbarrs. So he keeps these lads quiet, which is worth it. I think Kerry don't have a huge wealth of those types of players. Even, you look at our, an all-star cornerback like Tom Sullivan is probably known more for his offensive play than for his defensive play. And I suppose Dublin would have found out 3 years ago now in the All-Ireland final that if you, even as recently as the league game above and Thurles last year between Kerry and Dublin, where they obviously, made a tactic of putting in just high ball and saying, listen, if we trust the Kerry full back line won't be able to deal with that. I think the likes of Dylan Casey is one of the rare breeds of defender in Kerry that wants to defend and that needs to defend and that sees himself as a fella that keeps good forwards quiet. And that's his value, and his graph, I'm sure, will be rising again, provided he remains injury-free.
Yeah, when we look then at the midfield, sorry, actually just before that, just one other question I had on the defence, just with regards to that man-marking job. Is there a way in which Kerry are going to be able to live without their top man marker if he does become that on the pitch? Like, are we seeing a paddy tally system basically, Dara, so far in this league campaign, which would make allowances for people not being at the top of their game man marking wise, and maybe there's a system in place there that will allow Kerry's vulnerabilities to be remedied somewhat?
I'm sure every team has that kind of a thing. I think it's probably too early to say, I certainly can't say I'm walking away from Kerry games so far this year and said, there's Paddy Tally's imprint on the game. I'm sure there's plenty of other coaches in there telling them what to do in a defensive setup as well, So You'd have to think that Tally will bring something to the table, and that will manifest itself over the course of the year. You'd have to think, but I mean, Kerry's big issue over the last number of years has been just these breaches that happen out the field and don't get stemmed in time. Look at some of the best goals that have been scored in Croke Park in the last number of years. Have seen players run through the middle and stick it in the net, and it's usually Kerry that's the receiving end of it. They're the ones that stick out in our mind anyway as Kerry men. You say, how did that happen? And you can break it down all you want. You can see on Merchant's goal where the ball's from the throw in, like in Dublin it's not just against Kerry that Dublin scored like that, but as a Kerry person, you're saying, why is this happening? Why this shouldn't be happening. Conor McKenna's goals last year against Kerry as well, where you can see it coming a bit off. That scramble defence isn't there, and players are kind of minding their own patch, and then when they sense the danger, it's probably too late. I think no defender, no matter how good they are, they're going to be dependent on the heat that's coming on further out the field. When it's 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, Larkin O'Dell had a chance there the last day. Dean Rock inside him, and because it was a bad pass, that should have finished in another classic Kerry goal concession. Where there's a guy on his own. It was Jack Barry that was chasing Larkin O'Dell the last day, and you're kind of wondering, how did that happen? They're the issues that need to be broken down and say, look, this can't keep repeating itself. There are warning signs in the National League that by the time you come to Championship are too late to be rectified. And famously, Kerry people will say once the Championship isn't exposing those weaknesses for them in Championship football, in the National League certainly didn't last year. It was all rosy until you hit that. It's real top teams, the Tyrones, the Dublins, the Mayos, and these teams. They would expose. So coming towards the end of this year's league campaign, I'd expect Kerry, like let's say their last two games are Armagh and Tyrone. So they'll fairly iron out a few creases in Kerry's backline if they're there.
That's for sure. The midfield then, you're going with Diarmuid O'Connor and Jack Barry as your starters, David Moran and another Stacksman, Greg Horan, on the bench there. Is this your starting 8 and 9 if Moran improves his fitness for the start of Championship?
If Moran improves his fitness, you'd have to say he still has a role to play, but there's a lot of uncertainty. He needs to get his injury right. It all depends on how he's going, I suppose. But when he does come back, it was a serious enough injury, I would say. I mean, Moran's value to the Kerry team was shown in the heat of battle against Tyrone, even where, Tyrone couldn't get a foothold around the middle there with Moran there. His ability to slow the game down and to secure possession and make sure that a decent ball goes into the power line. Look, that's still there. All those things are still there. But there is a bit of expectation around Diarmuid O'Connor because he was such an outstanding underage player, because he's so athletic. Watching him even the last night, he played very, very well. I think that he got man of the match on the TV, and he has a high skill level. There was a few instances there the last day in wet, slippery conditions where his ball control was really, really good. But looking at him and saying, okay, your classic number 8 midfielders, you can go back to my time, let's say Dara Sheahan, who was a very dominant personality around the middle. When Dara went up for the ball, he hurt you. When he came down for the ball, he hurt you. With the ball, he hurt you. Diarmuid is still learning that. You look at Fitzpatrick's catch in the All-Ireland final last year against Mayo, and you'd say, wonder would Diarmuid O'Connor do that? I think he's well capable of doing it. But the frame, he's a big lad, but he probably could take another half a stone on him, and I mean, with the greatest respect to Dara, when he went up, Dara Sheahan would secure a half circle around himself, and he'd get the ball, and he'd come down. He'd probably hurt you on the way down as well, physically, and that's the way it should be. It's like Diarmuid went up very honestly the last day. I think it was with Brian Howard in the Dublin game, where he's going up on a wet night, hoping to make a majestic clean catch. Did actually catch it once or twice. But then when he came down, the ball spilled. And again, that's to be expected on a wet night with, good physicality around the middle. But he's learning that, I suppose. There's no question about his ability to eat up the ground once he gets possession. If it opens up in front of him, left and right, he's very skillful. Can hurt you on the scoreboard as well. But he needs to bring that element to his game to make him, the leading number 8 midfielder, I'd say, inside here in Kerry. So then that you have a guy that'll, be a perfect foil for him. And that's the way it's always been, traditionally with midfields, particularly in Kerry. Dara Sheahan was the constant, and then you had 9 or 10 different partners over the course of the career. David Moran became that, and he had, I'm sure, a load of midfield partners over the last 10, 15 years as well. So I think, this is a kind of a changing of the guard in a way. Like, David Moran is still a lot to contribute to Kerry football. Of course he does. He's still probably the best midfielder in club football, championship football in Kerry. There's no doubt about that. But it would be nice to see Diarmuid O'Connor, continue on with his good run form and become that leading heavyweight in every single way midfielder in the county. He has the capacity, so I think he has the ability to do so. And I think with that expectation that's in Kerry of Diarmuid O'Connor, there's a lot of confidence as well that he's going to be able to do that, because would know the lad, but from what I'm hearing, he's a great attitude, and that's half the battle.
Absolutely. The last thing I did want to touch on was the goalkeeper. We kind of glossed over the goalkeeper position with our 2 depth charts so far, but this isn't like a Niall Morgan situation or a Rob Hennelly situation. This is still up for grabs, I would suggest, Dara, but Shane Murphy's obviously started very well this year, and Shane Ryan, you have him down as his backup.
Yeah, Shane Ryan is, obviously the early part of this season has been squeezed out, and again, possession being 9/10 the law. Murphy hasn't done a whole pile wrong. Even the goal that was disallowed the last night against Dublin, you could argue, was pure bad luck. And the ball hits the post, hits his hand and goes in. But what he gives you from restarts, I think with Shane Ryan, he gives you a lot of confidence under the high ball. But Shane Murphy gives you probably a bit of a better restart, a bit more variety to the restart. The trajectory of his kick-out is more varied. It was kind of the David Clark-Rob Hennelly argument with Mayo all those years ago. Is it easier to break their kick-out or to crack their kick-out with X or Y in goal? And with Shane Murphy, I think he has the ability to spot in the run-up to a kick-out that this requires a change. So the kick-out that I was about to plan just right now, I'm going to change my mind in the run-up, and I think more so than Shane Ryan, he's able to do that. But both are very, very good keepers, both are very accomplished keepers, but Shane Murphy is more of a footballing goalie, and if it's, again, all things in an ideal conditions, that there isn't a wind there, Shane gives you real long-range pinging passes, like over the top of a cover, over the top of a screen, and that's probably where he edges out Shane Ryan, but I'd have confidence in both.
Yeah, for sure. So Shane Ryan would be your backup there. Just kind of a reminder of some of the other positions. Then you'd have the likes of Dan Donoghue, Mike Breen, Dylan Casey in the backs as the backup, David Moran as your backup in midfield, and then the likes of Dara Moynihan, Stephen O'Brien, Killian Spillane, Michael Burns as your backups in the forwards. This really does paint a picture, Dara, as a team with serious depth, more so than they've had it at any point, I'd say, in the last maybe even 10 years.
I think it's unusual. I wouldn't like to be trumpeting their abilities to do damage later on in the year, because we've been burnt, I suppose, the last number of years. League has been really good. Munster Championship's been really good, and you've got to the All-Ireland quarters, semi-finals, let's say, and it just hasn't happened for this group. But there is a consistency in terms of personnel even in this group right now. There doesn't seem to be any bolters out there. All those lads that would be on the list, the lads even that you haven't mentioned, Gavin Crowley's, Graham Sullivan's, Stephen O'Cumber's, if he comes back from, he's probably the only bolter if he does come back from his injury in time. Jack Savage again is a bit of a bolter from the county championship. Eoin O'Connor from the belt that is in there at the moment training, and being good from being rewarded. Tony Brosnan setting the world on fire at Sigerson level, and there's a consistency there in terms of the personnel. There are no real surprises, and it's really unusual that let's say the second round of the National League would be damn close to your championship team, really. Barring one or two lads that have to come back, to David Moran's, lads that are injured, the Joe O'Connors, the Mike Breens. People that have stepped away in the last year or 2 or 3, the likes of Jack Sherwood, Tommy Welch, James O'Donoghue, Peter Crowley, Jonathan Lyne, Mikey Gainey, Shane Enright, all those lads, it was a natural thing for them to probably step away. So there's a core group there at the moment, but there's a consistent group there as well. And, it's Jack O'Connor's first year of a particular term in charge. I'm sure, knowing Jack, he doesn't like comfort zones. He doesn't like flatlining graphs. He doesn't like subs being comfortable. So if they're not contributing something and putting the squeeze on somebody in possession of the jersey, he won't be happy, just like any other manager would be like. But there will be an element of getting to know you. And I think, that's the McGrath Cup. That's the opening rounds of the league. But by the time the championship comes around, I think they have a fair idea right now what their championship team is.
Yeah, and I think that probably plays into the point you made earlier on about the Munster Championship potentially not being a great level of competitiveness for a team, so they're really going hell for leather early in the year. You've been listening...
20 years ago.
Well, sorry, I forgot about 2020, but we've blocked that out of the mind, haven't we? That didn't happen. You've been listening to All-Ireland winning captain Dara Cinnéide go through his depth chart. Good stuff, Dara. Great work. Thanks a million for that, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Cheers on.
OTB AM.
All right, 13 minutes past 9. Were you feeling confident and alive after that, or were you like, I'm not allowing myself to believe?
Yeah, definitely the latter, and probably the first one. Both of those things can coexist, can't they?
Yeah. Rommel says, sure, we have no depth at all.
It is true.
And Dara Toole says, the courage from the people of Kerry to keep soldiering on against all the odds is worthy of a Greek epic. Well, they have many great artists who have created such Greek epics from a fight over a field. Phenomenally creative people you have. For once, I'm not being patronising.
I was like, wow. Because if you were being patronising, that would have been the cherry on the cake of all the patronisation you've done down through the years. That would have been the most patronising.
Right.
No, thank you for your lovely words.
There you go. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We did the Tyrone version with Kyle Coney, and we did End of Arley on Mayo. You can search OTB GAA and on your podcast stream, or you can get it on the YouTube channel as well. Next week we're looking at Dublin's depth, which at the moment looks a little bit scratchy. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you across the day. Live, the Club Championship show at 10:15. OTB Gold is Emmanuel Petit at 1 o'clock. The Koi Gig Pod is at 3. Our retro panel is The Competitive Obsession at 4, and OTB Gold is inside Porrick Harrington's gaff at 6. And then the show will be live tonight from 7. Up next, Joey Carbery joins us live.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Club Championship show on OTB Sports.
Training standards will increase, expectations will increase. Saw Kevin McManaman, the ultimate clutch player, tweeted last night, clutch moment on top of Martin O'Neill's sideline cut. I just can't go against Ballyhale.
Don't miss a moment of the GAA Club Championship. Download the OTB Sports app, subscribe to the GAA podcast feed, and watch the Club Championship show every Wednesday across OTB's social channels.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, it's 16 minutes past 9 this morning. Now, the Tackle Your Feelings campaign was launched by Rugby Players Ireland and Zurich in 2016. It's funded by the Zurich Foundation. As part of the Tackle Your Feelings campaign, Rugby Players Ireland were joined by Joey Carbery to support the hashtag I'm Taking Control campaign, which provides people with the tools to take control of their mental well-being using sports psychology and positive psychology principles. And I'm delighted to say that Joey, who's been announced as the newest ambassador for Tackle Your Feelings, is with us this morning here on OTB AM. Joey, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, guys. How are you?
Yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about sports psychology and your interest in that field and why you got interested in getting involved in this project in particular?
I think it's really important for obviously just not just sports people, but everyone in general. Having the mental well-being. I know personally from when I was out with my injury for a while that there was some hard times physically, but almost as much mentally. So while I was working away on my physical side, I knew the importance of working mentally as well. And that I found that hugely encouraging for me and helped me get through the tough times. So having that base behind you and the support network is massively important.
Is that something that you woke up to as a like 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old? Or was it actually something that when you were 15 you were coming through and reading sports psychology books and reading about kickers, for example? Like I know Johnny Wilkinson was big into talking to people and getting help early on in his career. So were you always interested in this?
Probably not that early, but when I started playing probably in crowded stadiums and under a bit more pressure, I started to look into it a little bit more, and I think it's something that's helped me a lot throughout the years, and it's something I'd definitely encourage anyone to give a go.
Because anytime I've read any sports psychology, you're reading it and you're going, this makes a lot of sense for a sports person, but actually it makes a lot of sense for real life too. It's basically cognitive behaviour therapy, where you're thinking, I just need to think about what's happening at the moment and focus on that, and everything else becomes external, and then you can quiet your brain and actually make it do whatever you want it to do.
Yeah, massively. Just like you said, I think it can be related to everyday practices as well. Like if you're under pressure with your work or your time pressure, or it's just good ways to be able to relax yourself and de-stress a little bit, because our mind can be a bit cluttered sometimes when you're stressed.
Do you have a routine? I mean, obviously you have a routine, but do you have a mental routine as well as a physical routine when you're taking big kicks?
I suppose just trying to breathe, that's a big thing, and not worry too much about the outcome, and more so just worry about 2 or 3 things that I think about myself, like staying online and getting a good connection on the ball. So trying to take away the worries of missing it is a big thing.
Various players do the pick the piece of grass up and throw it away, and like, I'm getting rid of that thing. Johnny Wilkinson used to have the hands cupped, and I remember one time, for a period of time, he was like, I'm just going to get the water that's in my hands, the imaginary water that's in his hands, to be still, and when that's still, he's ready to go. I thought that was like completely amazing, because the whole world is watching him going, what's he doing with his hands? And then years later he's like, I'm holding water, I'm keeping it still, and when that's still, my brain is still, and I kick it. Do you have something similar to any of that kind of stuff?
Probably not into that detail, but I like when I've done my steps back and I'm online with the ball, just to kind of feel my feet on the ground. I just something I focus on standing there. Not as technical as balancing the water, but it's just a little cue and then a few deep breaths and it settles me.
It's the same principle, isn't it? Like
yeah,
I'm alive and present here, the grass is green, I feel my feet.
Exactly, it's the same principle, and it's just something that diverts your brain a little bit away from maybe the stress of the game or the time in the game, and allows you to refocus back on the ball.
Did someone tell you to do that? Was that a trick that you picked up from somebody else?
Probably down the years, people have told me, like chatting with Richie Murphy a good bit when I was kicking, just to focus in on one thing rather than and not worry about anything else. But it's something I've kind of learned myself as well, and developed over the years during times where I haven't been kicking well, and something that I could just refocus myself into.
Do you think you're a mentally stronger person now at the other side of the injuries that you mentioned there a moment ago than you were beforehand?
Yeah, massively. I think the injury taught me a lot about mentally myself and being able to get through it. And I suppose it makes me extremely grateful as well to be back playing and to be healthy again. We kind of take it for granted sometimes when you're a professional rugby player, that you're just like, yeah, everything's good. But when you're actually been out and you miss it, and it's something you can't do for a while, I think you really, really miss it. So being able to be back out there and being back on the pitch, it's massive. I'm massively grateful for it.
What's the main emotion when you're not out there? Is it frustration? Is it anger? Or what's going through your head?
Frustration, I'd say. So being able to deal with that frustration and I suppose channel it into the right areas. Using the coping systems that are on the Tackle Your Feelings app helped me a lot as well. Being able to channel it all in and put it to good work, because it can be extremely powerful as well. So using those emotions for the betterment of you, I think, is important. So
you obviously had very well publicised issues with the ankle for a period of time, and then you get back and you get fit again and you play in November, and then you did the elbow. It must have been very difficult to deal with that when you're like, oh my God, I literally just got back. I'm like finally feeling good about life again, and then this random injury happens. I know, and I think the key word there is random. It was literally just a freak accident where, had his head been a few centimetres below, it would have just missed me completely. But yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. But I was lucky it wasn't too serious, and I could get back relatively quick. And when that happens, are you like, well, at least it's not my ankle, this is fine, I can deal with this because I'm going to have to deal with this throughout my career, because that's what's going to happen. It's rugby, I'm going to get some injuries, but so long as it's nothing serious, I'm going to be okay here.
Exactly. I think even though you're out for a few weeks, it's, you know, it's not to the same extent of what I've been through. So knowing that I've been through something worse weirdly makes it easier.
You were in a really interesting position then on Saturday, because I guess you're, from the public perception anyway, they haven't seen a lot of you play over the last couple of months. And then on top of that, it's your first Six Nations start. Is there anything in your head at all that is telling you that you're not going to be ready for that? Because it definitely seemed that you'd hit the ground running completely on Saturdays if you have been playing consecutively for the past 10 weeks or something like that.
I think that comes back to the environment that we're in and the preparation that we do during the weeks. I felt like I was ready, and like you said, I played a few games before mentally coming into that game, and I knew all I had to do was go out and do my job. And obviously very disappointing with the result, but it showed what the teams are made of and what we can achieve. We probably left the mountain too tall to climb at the end. We gave them the 10-point start early on, and it's tough to come back from that. But I think there was massive positives to come from it as well.
What was the build-up like from your perspective? Because I saw in the press conference that you were talking about, you had some family coming over anyway, but all of a sudden there was a gang going when they found out that you were starting. So what was that roller coaster like from you? At what point are you actually told? How does that conversation go?
We were told early enough on Thursday morning what the story was, so there was enough time to let people know and could chat to people then. But it was obviously meant a huge amount to me. It was my first Six Nations start, and to be able to have family there was incredibly special, and it doesn't get too much bigger than France and Paris.
No, exactly. It's one of the good trips as well. It's like everybody loves going to Paris, except I suspect for you there's kind of a little bit of an added headache then when suddenly 3-4 people go and becomes 10-12. You're like, Jesus, how am I going to get all these tickets?
It didn't end up being that much people. In the end, there was a few people, but only close. So I was sorted enough with the tickets. I couldn't have dealt with trying to get 10 tickets, to be honest.
I know, because it's not like you have anything else to worry about. You know, that massive French pack.
Exactly.
Oh, I've got to get these tickets too.
I know. I said to them, I was like, guys, I'll sort you out for this number, but after that, you're on your own.
Fair enough. I'm sure they all did quite well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that is actually like, where you do get to break the news to friends and family that all of your struggles for now are definitely over, and you've turned a corner and you're starting against France in Paris? Like, there's loads of different things where I suspect the game itself and the build up and actually being out there for Ireland's call, they're all huge kind of signifiers, but the people who know most intimately what you've been through are the ones you tell first. What's that conversation like?
Yeah, the conversations I had on Thursday with my parents and my fiance Robin were incredibly special, because they're the ones I would have had the tough conversations with during the tough times. So being able to share the nice stories and the good things that are happening, it makes it twice as nice. So being able to share the conversation, and then they were all over in Paris there with me, and being able to be with them the day before the game and the day of the game, going for a walk and just to clear the mind. It's incredibly special to share it with them, and it makes it so much nicer for me. Like, obviously I was incredibly proud, but to know that you've got such great people behind you makes it twice as special.
What's the difference in terms of how you actually play the game between starting a game and coming off, where you've seen different patterns of play? Like, you don't get an introduction where you know how the French back row are planning on targeting you, or what their defensive structure actually looks like for this game. When you're on the bench, you get to have at least a little sense of what that's going to be like. So that start to the match, how different is it from anything maybe you'd expected or experienced before?
I went about it the same way as if I was starting any other game. I think I was confident enough in the preparation I'd had during the week, but I actually prefer starting than being on the bench, as you kind of get all these nerves anyway before the game and the warm up, and then when the national anthems come on. But being able to just get out there and do it from the start, I think makes a big difference. So I actually find it tougher to be on the bench because you don't know what part of the game you're going to come in on. You don't know what the situation's going to be, or at least at the start you can have an influence, and you'll be able to put your foot forward from the start.
When you drop the ball on Matt Hansen's head and he's like suddenly straight through, is that like, well, the training ground really works, or is that something that is just one of those things that happens?
It was one of those things that happens because we'd actually planned to kick it the other way. And then after the first kick, Conway had come to me and he said they're completely blocking him. I think he was getting roughed up a bit, so he wasn't too happy about that. So I was like, right, let's go the other way. And it was kind of one of those things that just didn't really realise it happened until he'd scored the try and gave me the ball to take the kick. And I was like, geez, that actually worked.
Happy days.
But yeah, no, to be honest, it was an incredible catch, travelling at that speed and being able to keep your eye on it over your shoulder as well. He did really well.
In terms of your kicking as well at the moment, like your percentage rate at international level at the moment is absolutely sensational. So is this a sweet spot for you? Is this something that you've got nailed down in your build-up and just your ability to look at the post and go, yeah, they look pretty big to me at the moment?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with how my kicking's going. I feel comfortable when I stand over the ball, which is a massive thing. I was, before the Wales game though, I probably got 3 out of 20 in the warm up. I was like, good. This is not the great way to warm up, but you kind of just put those things behind you, and you know that when in the game, when things actually when they matter, it's all the preparation, all the work you've done, and in the week previous, you just have to back on that and have confidence in it.
Do you have many conversations with Johnny Sexton about that element of the game or any other element of playing 10?
Yeah, we'd have conversations definitely about like plays and what we're going to run for the week. And definitely when I was younger, I would have talked to him a lot more about that. But I think we both have our own routines and we both know what works for each one of us. So being able to talk about plays and stuff is obviously important because he's obviously an incredible rugby mind, and being able to pick his brain on a few things definitely helps my game a lot.
And is the game plan the exact same whether it's you or him in the 10 shirt?
Yeah, like it's a team game plan no matter who's on the pitch. 1 to 23 is, you just don't know with injury, like someone could pull out in the warm-up or someone could pull out in the first 5 minutes. So as university, we try and keep everything similar because it's better for the team.
Is there a tendency then, and like, I mean, in a positive sense, is there a tendency to, I guess, follow the graph a little bit of Johnny Sexton? Obviously, you'll have your own sort of stamp on things, but with regards to him taking the ball to the line, his bravery in the tackle, all that sort of stuff that plays into this new Ireland game plan, is there kind of a necessity for you to follow in those footsteps a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say so, definitely. I think the game plan, really, everyone can slot in, and if everyone does their job, and I suppose being the 10, you can learn a lot from what Johnny does and seeing what he does in training and in the game. So obviously we're not the same players, so we do things differently, but being able to see what he does and add little things to my game is massively important.
How great was the learning experience on Saturday? And I mean that in the sense of France more than anything else. I mean, coming up against that big French pack, playing in Paris, and I guess realising what a force this new French team is. Did you come away from the game thinking, right, that's a bit of a marker, we can learn a lot from this?
Yeah, hugely. I think obviously going up against them and with the next World Cup being in France, being in Stade de France, even getting a feel for it. I think we have 4 or 5 games in the World Cup there, so getting a feel for a full crowd and being able to plant that seed early is massively important. And then coming up against France as well, like, you don't know what the draw is going to be and how that's going to go. And I think they're a very strong team at the moment. They're very young as well. So, but I do think from personally, from an Irish side, I think we obviously didn't start the best, but to be able to come back into the game like we did and show the belief that we showed is a huge thing we can take, because no matter what happens, we can always fight back and get back into it.
Last one for me. There's a huge focus in the aftermath on the decision not to kick for the corner and to take the points. Is there anything in your heads afterwards now where you go and let's talk through the decision and see in retrospect, would we do something differently, or is it just that's parked straight away? Like, how do you first off, the level of focus that is on that, and then is there any parts of you that are going, well, we should just talk this through again, and would we make the same decision if that occurs or reoccurs?
I suppose you can always take learnings from it, but I think still looking back on it, I think it was the right call. It brought us to within 3 points with 9 minutes left. I think, who knows, we get back in, we get within anywhere in the halfway, and Conor Murray or myself back ourselves to kick from there. So I think it was the right call at the time. And yeah, looking back on it, I'd still, if I was to go back in time and do it again, I'd do the same thing. And the extra focus that comes now from these games, all these big decisions are going to be played out again and again and again in the media. That's just something you guys have to live with, I suspect. Definitely. Like, anyone knows that hindsight's a great thing, and people could be like, oh, if you kicked to the corner and you scored the 7, then you would have won, but you don't know. France could have come back, and you just don't know. I suppose we all still think to this day that it's the right call, and that's what we have to go on. We're the ones out on the pitch, and we were the ones who live by it. So yeah, I think we're deadly right. I think everybody's delighted that you're back and that you had the opportunity to show us what you're capable of at the weekend. Do you feel that support from the public? That there's, like, we've been dying to see what you can do in an Ireland jersey for so long. Because of the injuries, you haven't had a real fair crack at it just yet, but that's coming now, and we're all very excited about it. I guess you must be too. Yeah, massively. I did feel a huge amount of support, and there was so much well wishes, and it's so nice to be able to go out there and show somewhat of what I can do, and yeah, it's really exciting. So looking forward to the rest of the tournament and onwards. And keep up the good work. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Cheers. It's Joey Carbery there chatting to us this morning on OTB AM to launch Rugby Players Ireland Tackle Your Feelings campaign. The hashtag is I'm Taking Control, and it provides people with the tools to take control of their mental well-being using sports psychology and positive psychology principles. It's 9:35 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live every morning by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Tomorrow morning, Champions League reaction and analysis. We'll hear from former Donegal goalkeeper Paul Durkin around tonight's Sigerson Cup final between UL and NUIG. Much more as well. The Club Championship show is live across OTB at 10:15 this morning. 2 Club All-Ireland winners, Pádraig Mahoney of Ballygunner and Kilcoo's Jerome Johnson will join Will and Tommy. The hurling power rankings are on tomorrow's show as well. Right now we're bringing you Joe in conversation with Matt Lawton on last night's football show, talking about football's problem with cocaine and hooliganism.
Now you're welcome back. So we're looking here to talk about a brilliant piece written in the Times just in the past week. Matt Lawton is with us. He wrote the piece. The headline would catch the eye, needless to say. Football violence, cocaine in kids as young as 12, the new face of hooliganism. It's a great piece. It's well worth checking out on the Times website if you haven't read it already. Matt, great to have you on. Thanks for the time.
No problem.
So let's make the very obvious point that anybody can make. Drugs, cocaine use and football. This is a societal problem. We can see this in pubs, nightclubs, walking down the street, homes, any public space you care to mention. So it's not a football problem, and yet this is a problem very much affecting football. Your piece starts with the image of carnage, really. There's a train manager very upset. She's been comforted by colleagues because what's happened at Nottingham Station, Grimsby Town fans travelling to a game that afternoon, does sound like carnage, frankly.
Yeah, well, it was carnage on that train for sure. It was so badly trashed that they had to take it out of service. The police went on board the train, the British Transport Police, football police officers, and obviously the train staff, and there was, it was a mess. The train journey is, I think it's about 1 hour and 3/4 from Grimsby, and there was broken glass everywhere, empty beer bottles, empty drug bags. So they'd been using the drugs on the train. urine all over the seats, urine left in empty in bottles, and just such a mess. And actually, because of the broken glass, I guess, just unsafe for the train to continue. So the train that I think was supposed to go on to Leicester, I think it was going to Leicester anyway, had to be taken off into the sidings to be cleaned.
Meanwhile, for a number of passengers, there was the very unwelcome sight of police waiting at the train's destination with sniffer dogs on one occasion. And so you write, fans had wolfed down the drugs before pulling into the station because they had been forewarned. An earlier train was not aware of what was awaiting, and arrests were made.
Yeah, I assume that you know, in the age of the mobile phone, the first train that arrived with Grimsby fans was a couple of hours earlier, and they were caught by surprise by this sniffer dog operation. One of the things that came out of the Casey report into all that violence that marred the European Championship final Wembley last summer was the fact that a lot of this disorder that occurred then was fueled by cocaine. As you say, look, you know, this isn't just football's problem. It's extremely common across society. You said it yourself. I think, you know, pubs, bars across the land, cocaine is being used. But it makes sense, doesn't it, that it can also fuel disorder because it will, I guess, it makes these guys feel that little bit more invincible, that little bit more charged up, that little bit more aggressive, perhaps. And it is becoming a problem. And the police's response to that has been to start these random drug searches with dogs. That one in Nottingham that day was the first one they'd done since we did the piece. They were planning to do more, but since we did the piece and we did a couple of films when we were there over the weekend, and one of the films that's on Twitter, I think, has been watched 600,000 times or something. On the back of that, a number of clubs have contacted the Football Police Unit as well to get the same things done there. So no, but to go back to your point, so the first train arrived, they were caught by surprise. As a consequence of that, as they had to pass, before they had to pass the sniffer dogs, a lot of fans dumped their drugs on the ground. So actually, once they'd all gone, there were lots of these little bags left on the train platform. The second train, we assume, they were, you know, their mates who they go to games with and alert them to it. So they, rather than discard it on the train platform, they decided to take it on the train.
This was a Grimsby Town, Notts County match. I mean, we're talking to you from an entirely different vantage point in that we consume English football, obviously, on television. It's not at our train stations at weekends or across public transport. Yeah. So how commonplace is a scene like that, in so much as you can kind of estimate, you know, without having exact figures, but like a Grimsby Town, Notts County match is not making headlines internationally, and yet the scene described there for anybody around the Nottingham station area, and there's a few people quoted just expressing their disgust at the whole thing, and like, it's insane that this is just so commonplace. How widespread is it across a weekend of trains being trashed and problems like this?
I think it's pretty common because, look, the genesis of this piece was the fact that at the end of last month, the UK Football Policing Unit published these statistics, which were compiled on the back of what happened at Wembley. You know, we saw an issue at Wembley, obviously a serious issue. And they published these statistics, which basically said that since the 1920 season, they didn't compare the 2021 season, obviously, because there was nobody there. But there'd been a huge rise in arrests at football-related arrests, and a huge rise in incidents at football grounds across the top 5 leagues, you know, so from the Premier League all the way down to the National League. And in particular, there's been a real increase at the lower league clubs, I think partly because the Premier League clubs can afford to pay for the policing, the sufficient policing, whereas the lower league clubs, policing is expensive, and therefore, I think it's fair to say that a lot of clubs, a lot of games are under-policed. But I tell you what's been interesting, John, is since we did the piece, a lot of people have contacted us, people that work on the railways, people that travel regularly on the trains to matches, basically saying, thank you for doing this, because this is happening every week. I'm not sure trains are being taken out of service every week, but I think generally people are feeling that if they are unfortunate enough to be on a train with certain groups of fans, it can be a very unpleasant experience.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is, the train that came in the next day, one of the trains that came in the next day that we met for the Nottingham Forest-Leicester City game, yes, that train continued on its journey, but people got off that train that they'd shared with Leicester City fans, and they said, we actually quoted one of the police officers in the film, who they said it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous, and I just think it's a problem that is. Nobody is saying we are back to the bad old days of the sort of 70s, 80s and early 90s. But the sort of messaging from the police is, if we don't do something about this and get a handle on this, that's where we're heading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are at an interesting point, because they certainly, one of the striking images, or the more memorable images from the day of the Euro 2020 final, Sky Sports News is filming I would say what started off okay, but very quickly bubbling situation at Trafalgar Square, for instance, and beyond. And even in just random shots, you're seeing, I'd say, several people across the course of an afternoon being caught on camera snorting some kind of white substance in broad daylight. Nobody's passing a glance. And again, to emphasise, this isn't an attack on football. I was out for a meal 2-3 months ago, and it just stuck in my head. Dublin City Centre, 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. We were sitting outside because of pandemic, and there was a group maybe 10 feet from us who caught the eye because wearing tuxedos and looking very well heeled and very smart, and like in the middle of the street, the 20-something-year-old took out some cocaine and snorted it in the middle of the street, and didn't like turn away from the street to face the wall. He just did it, and we're kind of saying, wow, was this happening 10 years ago? Maybe I was blind to it, but it doesn't feel like that was quite happening 10 years ago. So the problem I have is I'm nearly 52 years old, and the height of my social life is going to Pizza Express with the kids. So I don't think it happens very often in Pizza Express. Yeah. Well, at least I don't think so. But no, I think it is commonplace. I'm, as you know, I'm quite a keen cyclist, and lads I cycle with on a Saturday morning, some of them are late 20s, early 30s, and they say to me, it's every work night out, it's going on. So, and they work in industries like recruitment and accountancy, and I think it is pretty commonplace. And I'm not. Crikey, I'm not condoning it. It's all a bit rock and roll for me, but it's as I say, the issue here is the connection with violence, is the fact that it fuels these guys. Yes,
they're doing it to get themselves charged up to go for it. And the fact of the matter is, the scene at the train station was one thing over that weekend, Joel, but the really shocking bit was actually the hand-to-hand fighting and smashing pubs up in the city centre the next day. 2 pubs had their windows smashed in. People were eating their Sunday lunch with their kids, and there were chairs and tables going through the windows.
Yeah.
It was proper violence, and 2 teams that hadn't played each other since 2014, and their respective hooligan firms wanted a tear-up in the city centre. And Nottingham it's a nice city, Nottingham. I know it quite well. I went to university just down the road from there, used to go there shopping as a student. I know that is like 30,000 years ago, but But it's always been a nice city. But my word, it wasn't a very nice place to be on that Sunday morning, that Sunday lunchtime.
Yeah, there's something so extraordinary in English life about football hooliganism and just normal Sunday lunches happening and families out and about in these same cities and them coexisting. The question I was going to ask from my long rambling point about certainly anecdotally feeling like cocaine is everywhere in a way that it mightn't have been 10, 20, 30 years ago, certainly. The police that you spoke to for this piece, and you did follow the UK football policing unit for a weekend, which was a fascinating insight. Is it their sense that there are more football fans taking drugs and therefore, it's contributing to the violence than, say, in comparison with 10 years ago and 20 years ago?
Yeah. Look, in fairness, they've only just started doing these drug search operations, and they're only at the moment compiling this evidence. So they're actually working with some academics. There's a professor at Kent University, and there's a link with Oxford University, and they're doing a proper academic study about it. They want to actually demonstrate that it is an issue. But no, they certainly believe that to be the case. And the two guys I was with, the way it works in English football is there are dedicated officers that are attached to each club, but then there's two guys, Stuart Dickerson and Wayne Mitchell, who are dedicated national football police officers. And they've both been football officers for 10, 15 years because Stuart was attached to Portsmouth for some years before that. So you have to say that they know what they're talking about, and they are saying that there is a definite rise in it. There's a definite escalation in drug use among football crowds, for sure.
In your piece, the UK Football Policing Unit, they last month highlighted dramatic escalation in violence and disorder at or around matches. Arrests are up by 47%. And then the Football League and the National League seen a rise of more than 50% in reported incidents. And you mentioned there the scene at the establishment. I don't want to name them because I'm sure they've had enough bad publicity and they don't want their name dragged through the mud. But you say you write and you reference it there. It was appalling. Families sat inside trying to enjoy their Sunday lunch. Leicester City fans smashed windows using chair and tables. The pub had been chosen as a venue for a clash of rival fans. No matter that no Forest fans were inside, they attacked the pub anyway. And then you mentioned as well, fighting broke out outside the pub with members of the baby squad among a 100-strong menacing group of Leicester fans being contained by the police. So the baby squad, presumably one of many firms. The concerning point you make as well is these firms, it would be very tempting to think, well, these are on their last legs and there's old men who were in their pomp in the 80s and they're clinging on to the glory days. Really, they are out there recruiting kids as young as maybe 12, 13, 14, getting them in some instances to smuggle drugs through for them?
Yeah, well, that's certainly the view. And I saw with my own eyes just how young some of the people in these groups are, and they are that young. That's honestly, some of them, they look about 9 stone. You know what I mean? Like they're tiny little lads, they are that young. I'm trying to think how tall I was about that age. I was probably about, 5'1", 5'2". So they're not big, but yet they're wearing the same uniform and they're behaving in the same way. Now, look, they're not frontline throwing the punches. And it is depressing when you do see, we sat in the planning meeting at the start of on Sunday morning, and they went through some of the known hooligans, and they call them faces. And they went through some of the individuals, and there's a guy in that group, in that baby squad, who was born in 1960. So your point about being on their last legs is true in some cases, because he is now 62. I'll be surprised if he's still going in 10, 15 years. Fair play to him if he is, but no, it is depressing that these people are, they just haven't matured. They haven't. And you could see that there were guys of that age, of my age. There was a guy that was born in 1970, which is the year I was born, and you're just thinking, good grief, seriously, catch yourself on, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But no, the really alarming bit for me was just how many young lads there are. And, there was a 14-year-old lad punched a police officer in the face at Derby a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
A 12-year-old lad had to be, I'm not sure he was arrested, but officers went and sat down with his mum in the week because he was abusing the police. He was performing pig noises in the face of officers. 12 years old, and you know, one of the officers told us that they'd issued a banning order in Nottinghamshire to a 13-year-old. There was a 15-year-old who they had actually asked to carry their drugs for them because obviously they thought it was less likely that a kid that young would be checked for drugs. And they are being, one of the inspectors that I spoke to, who's in one of the films, talked about, he compared it to grooming, the sort of grooming that they see in organised crime gangs. So it is going on, and it's a real worry. And one of the things that impressed me, actually, about what these football officers do, because it really is community policing. And, yeah, you know, it's quite funny to talk about the police doing a good job when, other parts of my own newspaper, they're quite rightly getting heavy criticism, particularly the Met. But these guys are doing a really good job, and they do, they pull out these kids when they see them, and they talk to them. And in some cases, they do take their details when they work out that they're on their own, and they will go and see their mum and dad in the week and basically say, did you even realise that your kid was in Nottingham at the weekend? Did you realise he was hanging out with a load of real unpleasant 40 and 50-year-olds? Guys doing cocaine, guys, throwing bits of furniture through windows, guys fighting in the streets with rival fans. Did you realise that your son is travelling around with these guys? Sometimes, and as the police said, sometimes they don't realise. They think their son's gone round to his mate's house for the day, but they're actually jumping on trains and they're going to football. Depressingly, some do realise. And the police say that sometimes you hit a brick wall with the parents, they don't care. Yeah. But, it's for me, I was most struck by that. I've been, I know when we cover football as journalists, we go through a different door and we often drive to the ground, and we may not be arriving at Nottingham Station at 10 o'clock in the morning for a 3 o'clock kickoff. So we don't see these things often. I was at Wembley that day. And I have seen a lot of violence and disorder over the years of football. It's not exclusively English problem, Joel, but it is definitely an English problem. And I've been following England for 20 years now, well, more than 20 years, going back to Euro 2000. And even only a few years ago, I can't quite think which year it was, but England played Seville in 1 October in a friendly. Played Spain in Seville. And I always remember, and this was only sort of 4 or 5 years ago, and went out for dinner with a few colleagues, came out of the restaurant, 10 o'clock at night, beautiful evening, 70 degrees, October, still lovely and warm, families walking around, mums and dads pushing kids in prams, just this lovely scenes, lovely big squares with palm trees and so on. And then we went round a corner and suddenly there must have been 200-300 England fans, shirts off, blood everywhere, riot police, chairs being thrown, bottles being thrown. It was a national embarrassment, And unfortunately, there is still an element in football. The worry here is that element at club football is starting to grow again.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.